is a hoax.
The president contends the affordability crisis is over and has said oil and gas prices will come down once the action in Iran is over. On his planned visit to China, the president said he has requested a delay of about a month or so because of the action in Iran. More than half the country under extreme weather alerts, blizzards burying parts of Michigan, Wisconsin, and Minnesota, Mid-Atlantic, and parts of the Northeast dealing with torrential rains, including Washington, D.C.
The entire Washington, D.C. region is under a tornado watch until 7 p.m. That line of storms is already ripping through the middle of the country. It has largely hit north and west of D.C. so far. The forecast here shows the potential for heavy rain, wind gusts later this evening up to 80 miles an hour, hail, even tornadoes.
Fox's Rich Edson in Washington. More than 12,000 flights have been delayed or canceled today due to weather. Wall Street, the Dow up 387 points. The Nasdaq added 268. The S&P plus 67. The price of crude oil fell toward $93 a barrel after topping $102 this morning. America's listening to Fox News.
I move mountains for a living. Literally. That means I don't carry hand lotion, and when it comes to serious heartburn, I don't mess around with anything but Rolaids. Rolaids' dual-active formula has calcium carbonate and magnesium hydroxide that relieves heartburn fast. Yeah, you heard right. 2 actives for that powerful relief. And the best part? The roll fits right here in my pocket, so I can get back to moving mountains.
Rolade spells powerful relief. Read each label. Use as directed. Keep out of reach of children.
Hear that? That's Mike. He took ZQL Pure Z's, so now he's sleeping soundly on a Sunday night. ZQL Pure Z's are fast-acting melatonin gummies with a complementary botanical blend to help Mike get the sleep he needs to wake up refreshed and ready to conquer Monday.
Let's do this Monday.
ZQL Pure Z's, just for sleep. Really great sleep.
These statements have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. These products are not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease. Use as directed.
Coach! The yellow light!
God, I'm walking here! I'm walking!
Good afternoon and welcome to the Jason Rantz Show. We are here on this Monday afternoon. Hope everyone had a wonderful weekend. You're listening to Seattle Red 770 AM. We're streaming on the Seattle Red app online at seattlered.com. We got a lot to get to this hour. A man who's just a quote-unquote Washington man received a bill from the DHS for $1.8 million because he didn't leave the state of Washington when he was supposed to. King 5 is there to tell his sob story. It's not actually a sob story. We're going to get into that and so much more. But first, a staple here in Seattle and Redmond closing after 25 years, just days after the income tax was passed. That's what's trending. Brought to you by the Sunset Auto family.
What's trending? Happening now.
Blazing Bagels, which has been a local chain that's operated all across Western Washington for 25 years, building a loyal following across the region, they abruptly shut down all 5 of its locations this week. The announcement came from King 5 on, I believe it was Saturday night when I originally saw this, but yesterday I saw some more reporting out on Reddit of people who went to their local shops to find that it was closed. Others taking photos of the storefronts that now have signs on them reading that they're shut down. And just like that, gone. Employees told King 5 that they got an email on Thursday with the announcement. And a lot of them, of course, were shocked by this. There were some rumors going around that Blazing Bagels was going through some tough times, and King 5 says they're going to be filing for bankruptcy, presumably in the coming days, if not today. But, you know, they spoke to some employees at the Soto Blazing Bagels, and they were obviously emotional, having to go into their place of employment, collect all their belongings, and leave.
It was very emotional. A lot of us were crying as we were talking and gathering like our personal belongings and everything.
And of course, there are employees who enjoyed what it was that they were doing, enjoyed the people that they were working with, who they won't get to work with anymore.
Seeing all of my coworkers and knowing that I'm not going to get to like just work with them anymore is a little crushing, because I really loved this job.
So Saturday, the workers were showing up to get their personal belongings. They found out at that point that they weren't reopening, And now the Chapter 7 liquidation begins. Now, this wasn't a struggling fly-by-night operation that never found its footing, right? I mean, this was Blazing Bagels. I don't eat bagels, certainly haven't within the last year, as it's very carb heavy, but I've had Blazing Bagels before, and they've done some work in this building. I remember when our sister station was doing a fundraiser for Treehouse, which helps foster care kids. I was producing that years and years and years ago, and they were always happy to pitch in any way they could. And, sometimes it just meant bringing bagels down to the volunteers who were answering phones for, donations coming into Treehouse. And they were part of the community, but they've been here for a while. They've had stores, not just in Seattle, but they had it in Redmond, which I think is where they were based, Bellevue, Issaquah as well. This was a known name, a staple in the community, a place that people counted on for their bagels and for their coffee. And not that long ago, the discussion around this company was expansion in Washington state, not extinction. And that's what makes this story hit harder for a lot of folks. They shared their message with great alarm from the staff members who I understand were frustrated.
If they knew that things weren't going well, they should have said something so people could start looking for jobs.
And while I understand that, I certainly sympathize with that position. And if I were in his position, I would hold that exact same viewpoint, right? No one wants the rug pulled out from under them. But sometimes that's easier said than done. And to me, it could indicate that this was a company that was struggling to get by in a very inhospitable environment, not wanting to pull the plug until they absolutely had to. But that is an important piece of all of this. This is the part where Washington Democrats and their allies in the media, including King 5, pretend that every business collapse is just some sort of isolated tragedy, that maybe it's bad luck, maybe it's bad business decisions that finally caught up to them. It's the market doing things that the market will do. Nothing to see here beyond just a sad story of employees who are out of a job. And certainly that's part of the story. But they never want to acknowledge that there could be a connection to policies coming out of Olympia that make it harder and more expensive and, frankly, more miserable to run a business in the state of Washington. Blazing Bagels managed to survive the Great Recession. It survived COVID. It survived the endless chaos that came with not just lockdown insanity, but inflation, the general anti-business culture of Seattle, the crime crisis that infected this entire region. The founder, Dennis Ballen, B-A-L-L-E-N, he was the kind of guy who even took the city of Redmond all the way to the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals over a ridiculous sign ordinance, and he actually won. This was not some sort of weak company. This wasn't an owner who didn't know how to battle through adversity, and yet now this business is gone. Now, it would be lazy to say that Washington Democrats passed an unconstitutional income tax and then, boom, Blazing Bagels shut down because of that alone. That's not my argument. I think the argument is bigger, and frankly, it's more damning. The closure of Blazing Bagels happened in a state that has become increasingly hostile to employers, to entrepreneurs, and especially small and mid-sized businesses just trying to survive on tight margins. I mean, food businesses in particular run on those razor-thin profit margins, and they are getting hammered from absolutely every direction. Labor costs are up, regulations pile up, compliance becomes a full-time job, rent is high, insurance is high, utilities are high, and supply costs are high. And so what did Washington Democrats decide to do despite all of this? They passed an unconstitutional income tax that sends one more message to anyone trying to build something here, is that we will punish success, we will change the rules. We don't care if you decide this place is no longer worth the risk. That matters, that messaging. Even if the tax wasn't a direct cause of this bankruptcy. And again, I doubt that it was a direct cause. I think it is foolish and naive to believe that none of these policies at all contribute to the general environment that makes it more difficult to do business here. Because even if that tax wasn't a direct cause of any of this, it contributes to the broader instability. It reinforces the sense that Washington is no longer a place where business owners can plan with confidence. It tells investors in these businesses or operators, franchisees. It tells the family-owned companies that people running the state see them less as partners in economic prosperity and more as walking ATMs. And once that mindset takes hold, closures like this, they don't feel surprising. And that's the real story here. Another local institution is gone, and the people in charge keep acting like they have nothing to do with creating the conditions that make survival nearly impossible. They talk endlessly about equity. They talk about the importance of building community and uplifting workers' rights. But then businesses close and workers lose their jobs. Customers lose the place that they go to every morning for their morning breakfast. And neighborhoods lose part of their identity. But hey, at least Olympia got to feel morally superior while another business bites the dust. You know, Blazing Bagels survived everything it was supposed to die from. Recession, pandemic, government nonsense, and still in the end, it's Democrats' anti-business climate that proved just too much. That should shame the people running this state. It's not. I'm not going to hold my breath that they feel anything here. But I do think that it should shame them. And the sad part is they're just going to go about their business as if nothing is in their control, that they're not responsible for anything. King 5 will still do a story that doesn't even mention any of the greater policies. And look, I don't know anything about Blazing Bagels. They could run this business into the ground and they were going to close anyway. Maybe. But to me, they've lasted this long. So I'm going to give them a little bit of credit that they know what it is they're doing. And I'm going to look at the obvious, which is, yet again, Washington Democrats choosing to institute policy after policy after policy, year after year after year, that makes it just too much for businesses to handle. Let's find out what else is trending.
What's trending? Media bias.
Well, King 5 News, Woke 5 News did it again. And of course, it's Sharon Yu who's the reporter on this. So it means we're talking about illegal immigration, and it's going to be exclusively from the perspective of someone who thinks any kind of immigration enforcement is somehow immoral and unjust. They found another immigration story, looked at a guy who was ordered to leave the United States, chose not to leave, and then somehow framed him as if he's the victim. That takes some special talent. Now, King 5 doesn't identify the man, making it very difficult for us to do any of our own due diligence to find out some of the details behind why he was ordered to be removed. But we know that he went through the process. He's a guy who lives in Washington State, and they say he got a letter from the Department of Homeland Security demanding about $1.8 million because he failed to depart after receiving a final removal order. His lawyer is Olia Katala, an immigration attorney. She read to King 5 what the letter said.
It is ordered that a civil penalty be imposed upon you in the amount of $1,820,352.
Now, the report says he came to the United States from Vietnam as a child in the early 80s. But he got his final order of removal. Again, final order of removal in 2007. Who was president in 2007? It was George W. Bush. He's somehow escaped any kind of scrutiny from the left on immigration orders because this wouldn't have been controversial at all. And I imagine it's gone through the process, or at least to a point, since 2007. So it likely also saw Obama, maybe even saw the first Trump administration. I don't know. But I do know that he went through the court process and was ordered to be removed. And yet he decided, apparently, to ignore that since 2007. So for almost 20 years, he said, I'm not going to do it. His attorney told King 5 that he checks in annually. He's got work permits, but also acknowledged that he's had the final removal order hanging over him for years. But of course, King 5 frames this in shock and panic and heartbreak, outrage at the government.
My client came to the United States in the early 80s, fleeing the Vietnam War, or they came as refugees from Vietnam. And they settled in the United States. So he was only 5 years old when he came, and he's in his late 40s now.
Yeah. Again, they don't tell us why he was ordered removed, which generally means, Sharon Yu, because she's not a particularly good reporter and not interested in reporting, this is just another sob story. She either didn't ask the question, doesn't care, or she knows the answer would not benefit this propaganda piece. That's on her. So let's start with the part activist media outlets like King 5 always want to blur. There was a final order of removal, and that is not a suggestion. It's not a vibe. It's not a strongly worded Yelp review from the immigration system. This is a legal order. And federal law has long allowed civil penalties against someone who is willfully failing or refusing to leave after a final removal order. Now, according to the statute, there's a per-day penalty. And the current adjusted maximum, I guess, is up to $998 per day. Back in June of last year, DHS, DOJ, they announced that they were streamlining the process for imposing those fines. Again, this is to send the message that we mean business. And when you've got an order of removal, you actually have to be removed. You have to leave. So when King 5 acts like this bill just fell from the sky because orange man bad. No. That's not what happened. This is a law that's been on the books since the 1990s. Their own report admits that. But what's changed is that the administration is actually using the law the way it was intended to. And that's what the left, in and out of the media, just cannot stand. Think about the pattern. Just think about this logically, or at least we'll try to think about this logically, because they don't really use any logic, it seems, on the left when it comes to this and so many other issues. But they get angry when ICE makes arrests. No matter the circumstances, they get angry. They get angry when judges issue removal orders, regardless, again, of the facts of the case. They get angry when Congress passes any immigration law. They get angry when the Department of Homeland Security enforces the penalties tied to those laws, tied to those removal orders, tied to an arrest. At some point, maybe just be honest and say what you mean, King 5. You want open borders. You want no consequences. You want immigration law to exist only on paper, I guess. So activists and sympathetic reporters like Sharon Yu can pretend that it's cruel when anyone actually enforces it. That's the game here. Is $1.8 million a huge bill? Of course it is. It's huge. It's enormous. It sounds crazy because it's supposed to sound crazy. It's called a deterrent. When the law says you can be fined daily for ignoring a removal order, and then you ignore that order for years, the number gets big. That's how math works. King 5 even talks about the fine, quote unquote, making sense mathematically, because the penalties can run up to $998 a day. Now, the attorney's argument is that her client can't leave because Vietnam won't issue travel documents for refugees. In the story, it says that. And says, again, he's remained here legally, quote unquote, with work permits.
He does have a removal order, but he cannot leave. So he does have work permits, and he is here in the United States legally. He has had regular check-ins annually.
Okay, fine. That's the strongest part of the story from his side. And we can acknowledge that. If there's a legitimate legal dispute over whether the fine should apply in this case, he can appeal. In fact, that's exactly what the attorney says people should do. She's telling them that.
That's what I tell people. Don't panic. Just reach out to an immigration attorney because they know about this, and they can help you out. They can, you can appeal this process.
Yeah, everything is appealable. We got it. But the process does exist, and he can use it. And yet, again, King 5 pretends that this is some sort of major scandal or controversy. Here's what I refuse to do, and what King 5 absolutely did. Pretends that the mere existence of a consequence is itself an injustice. No, it is not. And we have to completely reject that line of thinking. The injustice is that for years in this country, especially under the left's preferred immigration model, we've sent the message that laws are optional, that you can just ignore an order, miss a deadline, stay anyway. Fight everything forever and ever and ever, and there's always going to be someone on the left who will defend you. If the government finally says enough is enough, the media, at least King 5, rushes to the rescue with soft lighting and sad music and tells you the real villain is the system run by Orange Man. And this is why so many people are fed up. We're not confused about this. We understand fairness. We understand compassion. But we also understand that a country without borders and without any consequence whatsoever stops being a serious country. If a final order of removal means absolutely nothing, then what exactly are we doing? Why even have immigration courts? Why hold any hearing? Why have rulings at all? Why even have a process? Just put up a giant sign at the border like Joe Biden did, or Borders or Kamala Harris did, that says do whatever you want because eventually King 5 will find a way to make you into the victim. And that's why this story matters. Not because the bill is high, not because a man is upset. And again, maybe he's right to be upset. I don't know. They don't tell you the details in the story because that's not the intent of the story. The story matters because it exposes an entire worldview of the activist left and the local media outlets that carry their water. They don't really object to this fine because it's unusual. They object because they don't believe immigration law should be enforced in any meaningful way. They want all the symbolism of law, but none of the consequences. But sorry, that's not how a functioning country works. You don't get to ignore a lawful order for years and then act stunned that there's a price attached. And King 5 doesn't get to pretend that it's some sort of random act of cruelty when the underlying law is real, that the penalty structure is real. The appeal process is real. If the bill's too high under the facts of the case, let the court sort it out. Okay, fine. But the broader point stands that laws without consequences aren't actually laws. They're just, suggestions? And if the left hates the arrests and hates the court orders and hates the penalties, maybe they should finally stop dancing around it and just admit it. They want open borders. They don't want any enforcement. They don't want any consequences. Just own that. Just own it instead of having people like me have to explain this all. But the fact of the matter is, the rest of the country wants borders and enforcement and consequences. We can have conversations about the nuances about individual cases. Sharon Yu and King 5, they're not interested in that. This is nothing more than propaganda. That's it. That is quite literally all this story is. And boy, Sharon Yu, she's staying busy. She's got one of these stories almost every single day. And when her name is attached as the byline of any report from King 5, just know you're not getting the full story. You're not even getting a news report. You're getting propaganda. She is the worst. Absolutely the worst. 1-800-465-8770 for your texts. 1-800-465-8770. Over the years, Sunset Auto Family's warranty protection for life has paid over $6 million in warranty claims because they value the long-term relationships with their customers. So stop by for Sunset's complimentary warranty health checks. You bring your car in, they check your warranty, because there's nothing worse than a void warranty when you need it the most. You just get more at Sunset. And people do like that. SunsetAutoFamily.com. When we come back, the latest out of Iran. Plus, speaking of propaganda, James Tallarico is undoubtedly the new Beto O'Rourke, who was the OG Stacey Abrams and Amy McGrath. We'll get into those stories and more when we come back on the Jason Rantz Show.
SeattleRed.com.
Washington is a sanctuary state.
Local.
This was brought on by Democrats.
Conservative.
Democrats got all excited, high on their own supply.
Bold.
At least they can appreciate the president coming in with some type of help.
Finally, a website dedicated to local news in Seattle and the Pacific Northwest without the liberal spin.
This is going to be a major issue going forward.
Make it the first site you read every day. SeattleRed.com.
LifeLock, how can I help?
The IRS said I filed my return,
but I haven't.
1 in 4 tax-paying Americans has paid the price of identity fraud.
What do I do?
My refund, though.
I'm freaking out.
Don't worry, I can fix this.
LifeLock fixes identity theft guaranteed and gets your money back with up to $3 million in coverage.
I'm so relieved.
No problem. I'll be with you every step of the way.
1 in 4 was a fraud-paying American. Not anymore. Save up to 40% your first year with promo code NEWS at LifeLock.com. Terms apply.
pizza's here.
Oh, great. I'd love some, but I'm worried about my stomach issues.
If you're worried about having diarrhea, gas, bloating, stomach pain, or loose, oily stools, it may not just be stomach issues. It could be a condition called exocrine pancreatic insufficiency, or EPI. With EPI, the pancreas doesn't release enough enzymes to break down food, but EPI is manageable. Use the symptom checker on identifyepi.com and talk to your doctor. That's identifyepi.com. Sponsored by AbbVie.
Hey, it's Jason Rantz here for our friends over at the Herald Car Law Offices. If you get injured in a car accident with daylight saving time from last weekend or a weekend and a half ago with the snow last week, you might have found yourself in a car accident. And the last thing you want to do is take on an insurance company yourself, especially when you've got the Herald Car Law Offices on your side. The website is carlaw.com, C-A-R-R. There are 2 R's in car. This is a local law firm. They've got offices all across the Puget Sound, and they take on auto and truck accidents, bad faith insurers, and wrongful death when it comes to medical bills, repair costs, missing wages, and all the things you're not even thinking about that you otherwise would be owed. Herald Car Law Offices can help. He and his dedicated team are there to fight for you, deal with the insurance companies so you don't have to. The website is carlaw.com, 2 R's in car, C-A-R-R. Car accident, call CAR, tell them Jason Rantz sent you.
Cashback is not available on gas in New Jersey and Wisconsin.
Couponing. Wow, you didn't strike me as the coupon type.
Just trying to stay ahead of inflation. Gas, groceries, everything. It's all more expensive. I need to save wherever I can.
Have you tried Upside yet?
Upside? What's that?
It's a free app that I use that pays cash back for every gallon of gas I buy. You've got to buy gas to get around anyway. Might as well get paid for it.
Come on, does that really add up to anything?
I've already made around $200. The extra cash helped pay down my bills, and I even had a little extra left to treat myself.
And the Upside app is free?
Totally free, and the cash back is real. You can transfer the cash right to your bank account.
I'm downloading Upside right now.
Download the free Upside app now to earn cash back every time you buy gas. Use promo code ENJOY to get an extra 25 cents per gallon on your first tank. You can cash out anytime right to your bank, to PayPal, or a gift card for Amazon and other brands. Just download the free Upside app and use promo code ENJOY for a 25 cents per gallon bonus on your first tank. That's code ENJOY for a 25 cents per gallon bonus.
This is a test of your emergency alert system.
Meet Morgan Jones. Morgan is about to step into a world unknown to most, thanks to Progressive's Renters Insurance, a place of fresh linens and turn-down service. You see, Morgan temporarily vacated her apartment and has gone to a hotel because a pipe burst in her apartment. A pipe that made her sense of reality and apartment ceiling all come crashing down. Luckily, Morgan checked into Progressive's Protection Zone. Get a quote at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company, affiliates, and third-party insurers.
This is the story of the one. As a procurement manager for a hospital system, she keeps every facility in her network stocked and ready. That's why she counts on Grainger to be her single source for thousands of products, from disinfectants to lighting, air filters, and more. And with fast, dependable delivery, Grainger helps her keep every facility stocked, safe, and running smoothly. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Hey, what a surprise. We got tons of rain here in the Northwest in the late winter into the spring. It all adds up. Now's the time of the year when the ground becomes completely saturated with water, and that can cause real problems in your crawl space. It's Mike Salk here, and groundwater intrusion in crawl spaces, it's pretty common, but it's got to be addressed before it causes structural damage, or even worse, toxic mold in your home. You don't want any part of that. That's why if you're worried about any groundwater in your crawl space, you call Crawl Pros and you get a free corner-to-corner inspection. They'll climb into that crawl space, see what the condition is. They will go where you don't want to, definitely where I didn't want to. They came to my house and handled all this stuff. If they find water, they'll install a groundwater drainage system and a sump pump and reroute that water outside your home's footprint where it belongs. Don't take the risk. Do what I did. Have Crawl Pros come out for that free corner-to-corner inspection. They'll even check your attic at the same time. time. If you're worried that anything is going on with your crawl space or attic, call Crawl Pros or visit crawlpros.com.
Jason Rantz on Fox News.
Now Bernie Sanders flying a private jet to demand a communist wealth tax. Radio host and author Jason Rantz.
What's so particularly sad is he's pulling this line, which is the claim that they're truly only going after the wealthy, when the reality is they're going after absolutely everyone else. So what they're going to end up having to do is introduce higher taxes for folks who aren't the uber wealthy.
Exactly.
That's how it always starts.
The Jason Rantz Show every afternoon from 3 to 7 on Seattle Red.
This hour of the Jason Rantz Show is brought to you by General Transmission Repair.
Welcome back to the Jason Rantz Show on Seattle Red 770 AM, streaming online at seattlered.com. We got a lot to get to in the world of Iran and some of the claims that were made on the Sunday shows yesterday. But before that, I want to dive into an interview that Joe Scarborough did with the founder or CEO, I guess, of Axios, Jim Vandehei, I think his last name is. I see him on from time to time, and I see his clips somewhat frequently. He tries to be the sort of down the middle, like Axios, tries to be down the middle, but clearly slants pretty hard to the left. But when you go on with Morning Joe, it kind of forces you to get even further to the left, because Morning Joe has gone completely off the deep end. Joe Scarborough has, a guy who formerly was a quote-unquote Republican. But they were talking about James Tallarico, the state representative from Texas, who is the Democrat running for Senate, against John Cornyn. I know people want to believe that Ken Paxton is going to get to that. He's not. Ken Paxton is just causing problems, frankly, for the Republicans. And, I'm always of the opinion, especially in Texas, that is it possible that it's not a deeply red state because of places like Austin, and perhaps there's some voter apathy? And, in some cases, some Republicans, kind of like the Republicans here in Washington, just kind of feel jaded when they don't have someone who is as far to the right as we can be. I always have that as a caveat. But generally, I look at Texas, and for the longest time, Democrats in and out of the media have told us that they can turn Texas blue. They've wanted to turn Texas blue because symbolically it would be really important for them, and it would give them, control over a state that they've never had real control over outside of, small elections here or there at the hyperlocal level. But they've been pushing this talking point that Texas is going to turn blue every election since, I think, Obama. It might have started a little bit after that. I certainly paid more attention starting in 2020. And they kept pushing candidate after candidate after candidate. We keep getting told, for example, that James Tallarico has a shot, just like we were told that Beto O'Rourke has a shot, not just once, but twice, running for Senate and then for governor. And they really tried to create him into this threat. But it was never real. It was never real. And I'm in the camp that doesn't think James Tallarico as a potential threat is real. Now, have things changed in the last 6 years? Sure. Fine. Things changed. Things change all the time. And I'm, again, I never say anything is a shoo-in. But I'm getting Beto O'Rourke vibes. I'm getting Stacey Abrams vibes from Kentucky, Georgia, Amy McGrath from Kentucky. Stacey Abrams was going to be the next, some might say she's the current governor of Georgia, since she never really conceded. And then Amy McGrath was going to be the one who was going to oust Mitch McConnell from the Senate seat. They built these people up on the left in media only to create the idea of the potential that they could win, and hopefully they wanted to create a panic amongst the Republicans to spend a whole bunch of money that they otherwise would not have spent. And for the most part, that hasn't actually gone to maybe in Georgia with Stacey Abrams a little bit, but I don't recall Ted Cruz really panicked, and I don't recall Greg Abbott, the current governor of Georgia, panicked. John Cornyn is a little bit weaker amongst Republicans, so maybe there's a little bit of concern. But listen to the way they talked about this on Morning Joe.
I have never seen Republicans obsess about anybody
since Barack Obama first emerged on the scene. I'm not comparing him. I'm not saying Texas is not fool's gold. For Democrats, it probably still is. But there is a massive meltdown on Tallarico, the likes of which I haven't seen since.
He's going to explain why in a second, but this idea that there's a meltdown is so unbelievably stupid. This is a guy who has been propelled into the mainstream media, and Republicans are calling him out, which is what you would normally expect to have happen. To say that any Republican is obsessed with James Tallarico is absurd. We're just responding to the massive amount of free propaganda publicity he's getting. That's about it.
Barack Obama first came onto the scene. There's just this singular focus, and I think they don't like him because he actually does, even if they disagree with him on a couple of things, he knows the Bible.
No, he really doesn't. This is a guy who doesn't really know the Bible. He might have memorized portions of the Bible so he can give off the impression that he's some sort of, Christian, down-to-earth Texan. But no, this is a guy who defends abortion, who uses faith to advocate for open borders. This is a guy who doesn't seem to actually believe in the importance of a monotheistic God. So it's just so silly because he memorized some Bible verses and brings up the Bible that he knows it.
And they don't like that. That's Republican candidates are supposed to be going around preaching about Jesus and then ignoring just about everything that Jesus said about taking care of the poor.
And he's a super talented politician. He's obviously overperforming in a state that's usually tough for Democrats.
Is he overperforming? You're talking about a midterm Democratic primary. Is he overperforming? He ran up against a joke of a candidate in Jasmine Crockett, who the left tried to pretend was the future of the party. I mean, she essentially gave up her congressional seat because she bought into the hype that left-wing media put upon her because she was talking out against the Trump administration. They loved that. And so they decided to back her. But she was a weakened. We said from day one that she had no chance whatsoever in becoming the next governor or senator or anything out of Texas.
And as you said, he's really good at talking about faith and talking about how his policy is grounded in faith.
But they're not grounded in faith. He's a total phony, and anyone who pays even casual attention to his claims knows that.
And there is a lot of hypocrisy happening in the Christian movement in terms of their tone and being in conflict with what the Bible actually says. I will say there's still this interesting divide in MAGA. Like at the MAGA leadership level, they are definitely breaking with Trump on Iran, the Epstein files, everything else.
That is not true. That is not true. Maybe a little bit different when it comes to Epstein. We'll talk about that maybe in a second. But this idea that the MAGA base is breaking with Trump on Iran is completely fabricated. That is a fabricated talking point. It is not based in any reality. What they're doing is confusing intentionally the likes of like Candace Owens or Megyn Kelly and Tucker Carlson, some loud people on X who identified as MAGA at some point, saying that they're against the action in Iran. Literally every single poll from any major organization shows that MAGA supporters and Republicans in general overwhelmingly support the move. I think the lowest number I saw was 77% amongst Republicans. That was, I believe, a CBS poll. But that same poll had 84% MAGA support for Iran. So this idea that, they're breaking with Trump, that is just not true. That is 100% factually inaccurate.
But the voters and the members of Congress are still with him, no matter what. It's almost like there's three types of Republicans now. There's a kind of your establishment Republican.
And by the way, I love it when I'm being lectured on what kind of Republicans there are from Democrats who definitely have our back and want to see a strong Republican Party.
There's your Tucker Carlson MAGA, and then there's just...
Tucker Carlson is not MAGA. He is not MAGA. Trump is MAGA.
Trumpians, that whatever he believes, they believe.
Exactly.
Okay, so now MAGA no longer means MAGA. Now he's splitting up MAGA into Trumpian and MAGA, which apparently is defined by Tucker.
See those people supporting him on Iran, despite the fact that Joe Rogan and Tucker Carlson and go down the list of every popular MAGA podcaster have turned on the war. They're with him, not them. And that mesmerizing hold that he has over the voter, and then they're...
I can't. I'm done. I don't want to hear. It's just bad faith. It's just completely bad faith. Speaking of which, Congressman Adam Smith was on, I think, what was it? It was with Martha Raddatz, so ABC News. And he's, doing this really silly talking point that we've heard from folks on the left. We played a clip from someone else on Friday. I forget who it was. Basically doing the same. It was the guy from CNN, former Obama official whose name Keith Boykin. There we go. It came to me. But he's basically doing the same exact argument. So she asked him, Martha Raddatz asked Congressman Smith of Bellevue his response to some of the attacks we've seen on our own soil from Islamist extremists who are using the attacks in Iran as a way to exact revenge by killing Americans. They're trying to target as many Jews as humanly possible, which again kind of shows you the threat that we have on our own home turf. But his response was essentially saying, almost like they were justified, that we were asking for it. He doesn't say it quite in those words. Thankfully, he's smart enough not to say it that way. But that's effectively his argument.
Well, it's exacerbated the problem without question. I think it would be wrong to say it sparked it. We've seen these attacks before this war. I mean, we have a long-running problem with very terrorist organizations associated with ISIS trying to strike us here on our own soil. We need to be prepared for those. We need to look at what the Justice Department, the FBI are doing to protect us from that. So this isn't a new phenomenon, but without question, this has been ramped up because of the war in the Middle East that has brought in, some 14 countries have been attacked in one way or another. This war and this conflict is without question spreading right now.
Okay. So this whole idea that it exacerbated it, the way he's talking about it, because this is a guy who is against any sort of military action. He's taken the position that we weren't threatened. He's basically Senator Mark Warren and Chris Murphy as a congressman, a snake of a guy who used to be somewhat reasonable, despite, him and I disagreeing ideologically, but he's facing Shama Sawant for his reelection campaign. She's a socialist from Seattle, and he feels like this is potentially his to lose because of the threat of the progressive base. So he's trying to placate them by taking these new positions that I don't think he's previously held. But his central argument still makes the case of, and I won't say that he in that claim believes that they're justified in their attacks. I don't think that that's fair. But I do think he is arguing that this silly notion is a valid one, that we can't ever do anything in our own best interest when dealing with terrorist sponsors or terrorist state sponsors, because it could lead to some blowback here at home. He's obviously correct in noting that we have a problem in this country. It turns out having 4 years of open borders allowing crazy people to come into this country probably was a mistake, Adam Smith? But we obviously have terrorists in this country and terrorist sympathizers in this country. Some of them are American-born. Many of them are not. If we were to say, well, as a criticism for going to war, well, it could exacerbate the problem. Yeah, I'm sorry, but that's not a reason why we would not want to engage militarily when it's within our best interest to do so. Otherwise, we are giving terrorists the power to dictate foreign policy. You can't ignore, right, the potential consequences, quote unquote, as some people inartfully on the left want to put it. But this idea that we basically need to not do anything because it could upset some terrorists here, sorry, no. You've got one party that's going out of its way to try to root out the actual threat of terrorists here in this country, whereas people from Adam Smith's party have been the ones telling us actually white supremacy culture is the biggest threat. It's white supremacists that are homegrown domestic terrorists, white supremacists, they're the threat. Yeah, no, but they were never the threat. They're a threat, I suppose, but they're not the threat. And it was the Democrats who completely took their eye off the ball when it came to our domestic terrorist threat. And now they're using that threat that they helped to create, at a bare minimum, didn't do anything meaningful to destroy. They're now using that as a way to say, well, we shouldn't be in Iran. Sorry, I reject that completely. It is backward thinking. It's foolish thinking. It's Democrat thinking. 1-800-465-8770 for your text messages. 1-800-465-8770. You're listening to The Jason Rantz Show. When we come back, Brendan Carr, FCC commissioner, got a little bit of trouble for another statement he made that the left is intentionally, I think, taking completely out of context. We'll get into that and so much more when we come back on The Jason Rantz Show.
I had pain, I had numbness in my feet. That pain and that numbness just got worse and worse and worse as time went on.
This is Greg describing life with neuropathy.
I went to 5 podiatrists, tried different treatments, tried different orthotics, tried different shoes, had cortisone shots in the tops and the bottoms of my feet. Saw a neurologist. All my medical doctors said, can't help you. Live with the pain. You're not going to be able to sleep. This is your life. And then I just gave up until I found Sound Pain Solutions.
I'm Dr. Mark Shelley, a chiropractic physician and board-certified functional neurologist at Sound Pain Solutions. Our neuropathy treatments can rehabilitate damaged nerves. We use FDA-cleared, non-surgical, drug and pain-free procedures that help neuropathy sufferers like Greg find relief.
I feel better. I mean, just feeling better is huge.
If you experience numbness, shooting or burning pains, or loss of balance, call us. Sound Pain Solutions, 855-996-0025 or click soundpainsolutions.com.
Is it time to get your home sold? Nick Southard with Upgrade Realty here. Selling hundreds of homes around the Sound for over 25 years has taught me presentation is everything. And with my luxurious marketing, you'll attract tons of buyers, sell fast at top dollar, and net more money. Because Upgrade Realty will save you thousands in fees for only 1% listing commission. To learn more, visit upgraderealty.com. Upgrade your listing for 1%. Upgraderealty.com.
Jason Rantz here. Apparently, researchers have found a direct correlation between daylight saving time and an increase in car accidents. When we lose that hour of sleep, reaction times drop. Drivers get groggy, crashes spike. So if you're in an accident, don't try to battle the insurance company alone. Call the Herald Car Law offices right away. It can save you time and money when dealing with medical bills, repair costs, lost wages, or non-economic damages. Go to carlaw.com. There are 2 R's in car, C-A-R-R, carlaw.com. Car accident? Call CAR.
Here's a tale of Tina searching up and down for decent GLP-1s, but got spun around.
Till Good RX wrote in, hey, we got something new. GLP-1 prescriptions, all FDA approved.
Brand name meds, no flags that are red.
Clear pricing from the start. None of those hidden fees in your cart.
Delivered to your door or pick up same day. Darn tootin'.
Save time and money on prescriptions.
I'd put it to goodrx.com/weight loss. GoodRx is not insurance.
Check engine or ABS light on? Take the guesswork out of your warning lights with O'Reilly Veriscan. It's free. Ask for O'Reilly Veriscan.
O'Reilly Auto Parts.
Every business starts with an idea. With smart business buying from Amazon Business, get everything you need to grow in one familiar place. From office supplies to IT essentials and maintenance tools. Ready to bring your visions to life? Learn how at AmazonBusiness.com.
SeattleRed.com, the only place for local news.
He's using this, the mayor,
without the liberal spin.
to try to push back against National Guard coming to Portland to tackle crime and immigration.
Sign up for the newsletter and get the very latest local conservative news, opinion, exclusive video content, and more delivered right to your inbox every day.
We have got to stop entertaining this victim mentality.
Make it the first site you read every day. SeattleRed.com.
Welcome back to the Jason Rantz Show on Seattle Red 770 AM, online at seattlered.com, which I hope you'll check out for news and opinion without any of the left-wing spin. Let's clarify right at the top. FCC Chairman Brendan Carr did not, despite what some on the left are telling you, threaten broadcasters' licenses because they weren't supportive enough of President Trump's action in Iran. That is lazy, dishonest, and totally typical. Because there are some folks, many folks on the left who are just simply broken by Donald Trump, and anything that anyone even aligned with him says, they will take completely out of context. And this is intentional. Left-wing media wants you to believe that he said he would take a license away from a public broadcaster because they weren't supportive of President Trump. What he actually said was aimed at broadcasters that are running hoaxes, news distortions intentionally. He was talking about broadcasters airing literal fake news. And he said that they have to correct themselves before license renewals because they have to act in the public interest. That is according to the law. That is according to the FCC mandate. He was specifically referencing hoaxes. He uses the term hoax. He talks about that directly. And even in some of the reporting that is mischaracterizing what it is he said, when they give out the full quote, it's pretty clear what he's talking about. And what he said was not the same thing as saying you have to praise Trump or support the war in Iran. He's not saying you have to support anything that the president is saying or doing. It's not even the same thing as saying criticism is illegal, and that distinction matters. He's not talking about that. Because the rest of the left-wing media depicting him as such, it's just a lie. It's that panic industrial complex that gave off the impression that Brendan Carr said, be nice to Trump or I'm going to shut you down. That's not what he said. He also didn't write anything because the comments I saw were on X, or maybe he doubled down on them on X. It had nothing to do with any one particular broadcaster either. He was talking about false reporting about damage to a U.S. tanker aircraft in Saudi Arabia, and he was talking about the hoaxes and distortions that were being done intentionally to gin up support for the Democratic position on this. Now, you can, I guess, argue that Carr should always be more precise in how he frames things and make it so that it's not easily distorted. But I would argue, I guess, in response to that, that the left doesn't care about that. They're still, it doesn't matter what he says, they're going to misinterpret it intentionally. That's what they'll do. Now, you can also argue, and I think that this is fair because I live in this space, I work in this space, that any regulator, whether they're a Democrat or a Republican appointee, should tread carefully around speech issues. I think that is totally fair. But to claim that he threatened the licenses simply because coverage was anti-Trump is not his actual words. And this is the part where leftist media, I think, is telling on itself. They are so desperate to erase the word hoaxes and distortions from the story for a reason. Why are they so determined to make this about criticism about Trump rather than criticism of reporting stuff that's false intentionally? Again, he was talking about intentional hoaxes that are being reported as fact. Why is it that upsets left-wing media? Because they are no longer going to be able to get away with intentionally misreporting. Again, we're not talking about mistakes. We're not talking about criticism. We're not even talking about partisan coverage. We're talking about lying, malicious hoax stories. The FCC itself says its authority over news content is limited by the First Amendment. It's not just the First Amendment that limits, the Communications Act limits what they can do. But they say intentional news distortion is not protected by the First Amendment and does not bar them from getting involved. They do this all the time. It's public guidance that says it's illegal for broadcasters to intentionally distort the news. And the agency might act when there's documented evidence that a licensee or the management or even the reporters deliberately falsified a news story. That's actually fine for the FCC to get involved with. The FCC has a separate hoax rule that applies to false broadcasts about crimes, about world events like catastrophes. And that part's important to understand. Because if you are a broadcaster that knows what you're doing is false and you foreseeably cause substantial public harm, there should be consequences. So Carr's not inventing some brand new standard out of thin air. It already exists. He's pointing to something that pre-existed him before he even got onto the FCC. There's a difference between opinion and deliberate falsehood. But folks on the left don't want to have that conversation, at least not now. They did before. Brian Stelter among them. He did some analysis on this Brendan Carr story, I think in bad faith, on CNN, which I'll be on tomorrow night and Wednesday night. Maybe this will come up. But just a few years ago, Brian Stelter himself argued that Fox News and similar conservative outlets were spreading harmful falsehoods. He talked about it in the context of COVID. He talked about it in the context of the 2020 election. And he argued at the time that this was poisoning public discourse. And there was a lot of push to try to get Fox News canceled from cable services. Now, this is not directly FCC related because the FCC doesn't have control over cable broadcast. But he was defending the folks who wanted to censor Fox News because they reported things that folks didn't like. Or in the claims of people like Brian Stelter were reporting on hoaxes, things that they knew were false. And he argued that wasn't censorship at all. That was just protecting the public discourse. It was reducing the reach of lies. His key distinction was that freedom of speech is not the same as freedom of reach. So he was okay there, but the second that Brendan Carr says virtually the same thing just about liberals, all of a sudden, oh no, this is too far. We know exactly what it is they're doing. They're not even very good at hiding it. 1-800-465-8770 for your texts. You're listening to The Jason Rantz Show.
Jason Rantz on Fox News.
Seattle just made it harder for ICE to do its job. Perfect time to bring in our Seattle guy. That would be Jason Rantz.
They can't exchange any information, cooperate in any way, shape, or form with federal immigration law. They've been open about their ideological position here, and as you and I have talked about many times, they make no distinction between criminal illegal immigrants who are dangerous and everybody else.
The Jason Rantz Show every afternoon from 3 to 7 on Seattle Red. Bookmark SeattleRed.com now for exclusive content.
Cashback is not available on gas in New Jersey and Wisconsin.
Couponing. Wow, you didn't strike me as the coupon type.
Just trying to stay ahead of inflation. Gas, groceries, everything. It's all more expensive. I need to save wherever I can.
Have you tried Upside yet?
Upside? What's that?
It's a free app that I use that pays cash back for every gallon of gas I buy. You've got to buy gas to get around anyway. Might as well get paid for it.
Come on, does that really add up to anything?
I've already made around $200. The extra cash helped pay down my bills, and I even had a little extra left to treat myself.
And the Upside app is free?
Totally free, and the cash back is real. You can transfer the cash right to your bank account.
I'm downloading Upside right now.
Download the free Upside app now to earn cash back every time you buy gas. Use promo code ENJOY to get an extra 25 cents per gallon on your first tank. You can cash out anytime right to your bank, to PayPal, or a gift card for Amazon and other brands. Just download the free Upside app and use promo code ENJOY for a 25 cents per gallon bonus on your first tank. That's code ENJOY for a 25 cents per gallon bonus.
Considering a new car due to a failing transmission? Financing rates are through the roof. Before you spend thousands on a new car, call General Transmission Repair, the experts at repairing transmissions and saving you money. GeneralTransmission.com or 206-878-5759.
You know, retirement is supposed to be a time of rest and relaxation. But every week I get calls from seniors who are stressed out because their cost of living keeps going up. They love their home and they want to stay in it, but they're struggling with rising property taxes, monthly bills, and monthly mortgage payments if they have one. Hi, I'm Steve Teitler, owner of Best Mortgage, a local family-owned company. I specialize in the reverse mortgage, which allows seniors to tap into your home equity for tax-free cash to pay off your mortgage, pay off debts, and maybe put some extra money in the bank. A reverse mortgage is a great option for some people, but it's not right for everyone. So give me a call and you'll talk directly to me in person or over the phone for honest advice you can trust. Search for Best Mortgage on the web or call us at 425-649-6000. You'll talk to me, not an AI robot. Best Mortgage, 425-649-6000.
At Madrona Financial and CPAs, we believe financial decisions should be made with clarity, not sales pressure. That's why we host weekly educational seminars and live webinars on retirement planning, tax strategies, and rental property decisions, designed to help you think more strategically about your future. Whether you prefer attending in person or joining from home, there's always something coming up. To see our upcoming schedule, visit MadronaFinancial.com. Madrona Financial and CPAs. Informed planning starts here. Madrona Financial Financial Services is an SEC registered investment advisor.
If you need security for your event or business, contact Security Services Northwest. From armed and unarmed officers to advanced remote monitoring, they've been doing it all since 1977. Go to ssnwhq.com for Security Services Northwest.
We are Seattle Red. Learn how Seattle Red is amplifying the conservative movement in Seattle at seattlered.com. Seattle Red on 770 KTTH Seattle, 97.3 KIRO-FM, HD3 Tacoma, Seattle, 94.5 K233 DT Eastway 33 BU Seattle.
Millions in the path. I'm Lisa Lacera, Fox News. The upper Midwest getting hammered with a late winter storm.
Over the past 3 days, we have seen 3 feet of snow falling in some parts of the UP of Michigan and in the northern parts of Michigan. Looking into Green Bay, Wisconsin, this has been the biggest snowstorm for them in 138 years, and it's still not over. We still have those blizzard warnings in place through the rest of this evening and also overnight into early on our Tuesday morning. Now, all of that energy is continuing to track across the Northeast now, and we're still seeing those severe storms that are still potentially impacting the eastern portion of the United States, where we have really strong wind gusts. That's going to be one of the main concerns as we continue throughout the rest of tonight. Heavy rain also going to be impacting the Northeast all throughout this evening commute.
Fox Weather's Payne Frony. The weather also forcing cancellations and delays of at least 12,000 flights. Meanwhile, a heat dome over the Southwest will send temperatures in Arizona into triple digits this week. And in California, the San Francisco Bay and Sacramento areas expected to see temperatures near 90 degrees. President Trump defending his decision to launch strikes against Iran 3 weeks into the action.
They're sending thousands of missiles into countries that didn't expect to be in the war because they wanted to take over the Middle East.
But Democrats say the president's sending mixed messages.
Trump also claimed today, quote, they want to make a deal. They are talking to our people. And then moments later, he said, all their leaders are dead. We don't even know who they're dealing with. Which one is it?
Senate Democratic leader Chuck Schumer, the Senate and House have canceled all votes tonight due to the threat of severe weather. A federal judge has temporarily blocked the Department of Health and Human Services from cutting the number of vaccines recommended for every child, saying Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. likely violated federal procedures in revamping a key vaccine advisory committee. America's listening to Fox News.
I move mountains for a living. Literally. That means I don't carry hand lotion, and when it comes to serious heartburn, I don't mess around with anything but Rolaids. Rolaids' dual-active formula has calcium carbonate and magnesium hydroxide that relieves heartburn fast. Yeah, you heard right. 2 actives for that powerful relief. And the best part? The roll fits right here in my pocket, so I can get back to moving mountains.
Rolaid spells powerful relief. Read each label. Use as directed. Keep out of reach of children.
Hear that? That's Mike. He took ZzzQuil Pure Z's, so now he's sleeping soundly on a Sunday night. ZzzQuil Pure Z's are fast-acting melatonin gummies with a complementary botanical blend to help Mike get the sleep he needs to wake up refreshed and ready to conquer Monday.
Let's do this Monday.
ZzzQuil Pure Z's, just for sleep. Really great sleep.
These statements have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. These products are not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease. Use as directed.
Coach! Yellow light! I'm walking here! I'm walking!
Good afternoon and welcome to the Jason Rantz Show. We are here on Seattle Red 770 AM. We are streaming on the Seattle Red app. We got a lot to get to. Travis Couture stops by. He's running for re-election. He's one of the most important pieces of what Republicans have in our arsenal in Olympia. He'll explain what's on the line. But first, did Starbucks really properly sell how significant what it is they're doing in Nashville is? That's what's trending. Brought to you by Legacy Group Capital, Common Sense Lending.
What's trending? Starbucks.
The big news just last week was that Starbucks expanding in Nashville is kind of important for this region. They made the announcement that they're moving some jobs to a new corporate space out in Nashville. And it wasn't entirely clear how many jobs, but we were told, especially by Democrats who didn't want us to note this story at a time where they had just passed an income tax unconstitutionally, that it wasn't that big of a deal. This is just part of strategic growth for Starbucks. I wouldn't look too much into it. But there was an article out of Nashville at a local newspaper, I think the Chronicle, something like that, the Co-Star, I guess it's called. But they've got more details in this, and there's reason to believe that Starbucks is, in fact, moving headquarters in significant ways. Because they say in the story that they're looking for 250,000 square feet of Nashville office space. 250,000. And that suggests the move to Nashville is far larger in scope than what we were initially told. And so it shines a bigger spotlight on Democrats' decision to pass an unconstitutional income tax that people have already been saying, we've already been noting, is accelerating the exodus out of not just Seattle, but Washington State. In fact, at 5:30, don't miss this. We're going to talk with a business owner, Zach Abraham, who is leaving the state as a result of this. But CoStar News reported just the other day that Starbucks has put out spatial requirements for about 250,000 square feet for its corporate hub in Nashville, and it could house upward of 2,000 employees. And they found some, potential property in downtown. There was one spot at something called the Peabody Union Complex. This report says it has about 300,000 square feet that has yet to land a single tenant since its completion last year. So this could potentially be a new home for Starbucks. That scale, they say in this report, would make the deal one of Nashville's largest office leases in the post-pandemic era. Now, Starbucks hasn't commented. The real estate search CBRE, they haven't commented on this. But when Starbucks announced this decision about a week and a half ago or so, it framed this as a supply chain consolidation play, and this is just a strategy in growing in the Southeast. It's not that big of a deal. Hey, we're only offering, a few dozen employees from Seattle to move over. But when you hear 250,000 square feet of office space, that obviously tells a little bit different of a story about expansion. And it's impossible to ignore the timing of all of this. Same thing with Blazing Bagels announcing that they were going to close. We talked about it last hour. We'll do it again at 6 o'clock. But it's hard to ignore these decisions that are made at this time. I mean, Democrats just passed a state income tax. Businesses warned about this. They screamed about this. They said we're already struggling to retain big employers. Tennessee has no income tax, and you're getting rid of a key perk to doing business in Washington. We had on this show Taylor Riggs from Fox Business a couple weeks ago saying that, the writing's been on the wall for a while now. Now, Starbucks still hasn't walked back that it's going to keep its global headquarters in Seattle, but routing potentially 2,000 workers to a tax-free state that we've seen many Fortune 500 companies flock to isn't exactly a ringing endorsement for the business climate here. Now, I don't think a full 2,000 workers will go there from here, but I can tell you that that's going to be, at least 1,900 employees who aren't going to be employed here and will be employed in Nashville instead. And this is one more decision by business following the footsteps of Amazon, FedEx, Oracle. They've planted corporate offices in Nashville. And part of the reason why is because it's affordable, it's safe, they've got a diverse job market, there's no income tax. So again, they can pretend that this is just Nashville getting lucky and Starbucks making a minor move. It doesn't seem that way to me. It seems quite the opposite. Let's find out what else is trending.
What's trending? Legal.
A federal appeals court just refused to reconsider a ruling that forces the Olympus Spa in Linwood to admit biological males who identify as women. And again, this is a nude women's spa. We've talked about this for, it feels like a few years now, I think at least a couple years. This is now going to undoubtedly get to the U.S. Supreme Court, not the state Supreme Court, but the U.S. Supreme Court. Olympus Spa v. Armstrong is essentially a court case about whether or not you can compel a religious business owner that provides services for women. Can you force them into accepting, under the state's anti-discrimination law, biological men? The Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals denied a rehearing of this case. This originally went to a three-judge panel on the Ninth Circuit. They appealed that to the full panel, and they said, although it wasn't overwhelming, they said, no, we're going to keep this the way it is. A judge by the name of Lawrence Van Dyke wrote the lead dissent, and he did not waste a single syllable in softening his view on this. He said, this is a case about swinging bleeps, male appendages. The Christian owners of Olympus Spa, a traditional Korean women-only nude spa, understandably don't want them in their spa. Their female employees and female clients don't want them in their spa either. But Washington State insists on them. And now so does the Ninth Circuit. In this ruling, which we've got linked to over at seattlered.com, Judge Van Dyke accused, quote, woke regulators and complicit judges, end quote, of ignoring the real harm that's done when you've got rulings that are distancing themselves from any semblance of fairness for women and girls. Now, a lot of his colleagues, 28 in fact, were not happy with what he wrote because he said swinging bleeps. And some of the critics include people on his side. But the senior circuit judge, Margaret McKean, she issued a statement calling the language, quote, vulgar barroom talk, saying that it, quote, demeans this court. Two additional judges said, we're better than this. But I'm glad Judge Van Dyke did what he did. In fact, he responded, he fired back at the criticism that claiming his colleagues display, quote, the fastidious sensibilities of a Victorian nun when it comes to mere unpleasant words. But, he points out, they ignore the government trampling on religious liberties and exposing women to male genitalia. So kudos for this judge for stepping up and saying what needed to be said. He did it in a way that guaranteed that this was going to get news coverage. And it did get a lot of, I remember Friday night into Saturday, this story was all over the place. I just wish it had come out during our show. But we got it now. The story is up at seattlered.com. I hope you'll check it out, seattlered.com. Let's find out what else is trending.
What's trending? Dum alert.
Senator Cory Booker and some other Democrats are trying to deflect on their decision to close down funding for the Department of Homeland Security. Both were called out on this by, kudos to them, by left-wing journalists. It was Adam Schiff, Cory Booker, and some others who decided to wade in on this. They were asked about it. On Meet the Press, Schiff was asked about this, and she again framed it, I think, in a reasonable way. Kristen Welker is over at NBC saying, "Is it responsible for Democrats to do that?" And you got the same talking point from Schiff that Jake Tapper from CNN ended up getting from what's his name, Cory Booker.
Isn't it time for Democrats to reopen and refund DHS?
So first of all, Democrats have tried multiple times to try to get TSA, CISA, the Coast Guard funded. Republicans have refused time and time again to fund.
Yeah, they want the whole agency funded.
They want the whole agency.
He says that as if that's the wrong position to take. Republicans want this all funded for some very obvious reasons. You can't just hold one agency hostage. If you hold agencies hostage for budgetary talks, then number one, nothing will ever get budgeted. And you can end up turning in certain agencies into partisan tools, which is precisely how they're not supposed to act. But what's rather telling about this, not just that they're using the same really tired talking point, is that they're doing this purely for political reasons, purely to inflict pain. They don't care that they're using TSA agents and members of the Coast Guard for political. They have no problem using them as human props, because understand that ICE is already funded through 2029. The funding package there was put into one big beautiful bill. That was done intentionally, and the Democrats weren't able to undo that. They couldn't stop it. Likewise, they can't stop the funding all of a sudden for ICE. And so they're stopping the funding for CISA. They're stopping the funding for TSA and Coast Guard. They're doing it for the entire DHS infrastructure, except for the one that they want to see defunded. And by the way, CISA is the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency. They do tech IT protection for our elections. Kim Wyman used to be there. But they're harming people at a time that we've seen an increase in terrorist attacks on American soil. And they're doing it for what? To stop funding that already has been approved and isn't going to be able to be turned back? And you knew that what they were doing here was political from the beginning, because they also called for the axing of Kristi Noem. Well, she's been fired. She's out. And yet they're not saying that that's enough. They want to move forward with other things like doxing ICE agents. And the Trump administration, Republicans, they're not willing to do that. They shouldn't be. So this is 100% owned by the Democrats. They're trying to get out of it. But the reason why Jake Tapper or Kristen Welker and whomever else over the weekend talked about this, the reason why they're bringing this up and pointing this out is because they understand the threat is real and we're vulnerable as a direct result of that. And that doesn't feel great. I'm going to be on a plane later tonight. I want to make sure that, one, getting through TSA security is easy, but also not compromised in any way. And you got a lot of people who aren't working for a paycheck right now. Democrats are doing this. Democrats who claim that they care about the working class. Democrats are doing this. It's just absolutely absurd. Now, also who talked about this was Pete Buttigieg, who did the same thing. He was also, I think he was on with Tapper too. And again, he's trying to parse this out. Oh, actually, it's the Republicans who are blocking the Democratic proposals to fund all of DHS except for ICE. Again, this is just a weakened argument. And, maybe some people get away with it because I get why someone might fall for this talking point. But it is that. It is a talking point. Let's find out what else is trending.
What's trending on the campaign trail?
One of the strongest conservative voices we have in Olympia, State Representative Travis Couture, who over the weekend announced he's running for re-election. And he joins me now. Welcome back to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me on again.
Why would you want, yet again, such a godforsaken job in a place filled with liberal lunacy?
Yeah, I guess you got to be a little bit of a masochist to do this job. But honestly, I just love our state and I love its people, even some of the people who don't like me that much. And I believe in this state. And I think we could turn a corner if we work really hard.
What's something that you looked at this last legislative session and said, we could have done just a little bit better, and this is why people at home need to start paying a little bit more attention and start voting?
Yeah, I mean, of course, last session we had the largest tax increases in state history. Now we have a record ballooning budget that is 3 times that of inflation. And of course, they passed an income tax and they gave Attorney General Nick Brown like unprecedented new powers. And now they even are trying to take away your sheriff if they don't like your sheriff. And so it's wildly unconstitutional what's happening here. And of course, in the House of Representatives in Olympia, we have 39 Republicans and 57 Democrats. There's only so much you can do to overcome the math. And despite that, our caucus punched well above its weight. Yep. And, I always tell people that we're outnumbered, but we're never outclassed. We killed the most Democrat bills ever in this last session, but it still wasn't enough. And so after the income tax finally passed after an almost 25-hour debate, I looked around at members of my caucus and we were just soul crushed, just absolutely soul crushed by that. And we don't ever want to have that feeling again. And we can beat this thing, but it takes doing the hard work. We have to win some seats. You can't overcome that math. And so I'm running for re-election again, but also I'm going to be going around Washington State trying to see where we could pick up new seats for the Republican Party and try to find new leaders who don't want to tax you into oblivion.
And this is what's really important. It's not just picking up new seats, but it's keeping the seats that we already have. Is there any worry about Mason County and your position in the 35th? Is there a demographic change that you're worried about?
Well, I never take anything for granted. That's number one. This is being elected to office is a privilege and no one's owed anything, including me. And so you have to go out and work for it. And just in 2024 alone, I had almost 60% of the vote, which is great. But at the same time, Kamala Harris won the 35th district by 0.5%. And so I never take anything for granted, and I take it very seriously, but also don't worry too much because I think that you have to let the work speak for itself. And I've put in an incredible amount of work for the people of Washington, being a budget hawk and making sure that I fight back against all the insanity here in Olympia. But at the same time, we have other districts in Washington State that Republicans currently hold seats in after the Democrats gerrymandered a lot of the district lines a little over a year ago. We have more competitive districts in the 14th, like in the Yakima area, and more competitive districts down south, like in the Skamania area in the 17th district and in the 18th district. And of course, perennially, the 26th district in the Gig Harbor, Port Orchard area. where Michelle Caldier is now, or Michelle Valdez, I should say, is now leaving.
Well, and so if you can speak to that, because it's not just her. I mean, Judy Warnick, also on the state Senate side, announced that she's retiring. You know, I don't think either of those lawmakers would have had a tough time getting reelected. They've shown many, many times over again that they can win. But now with them not on the ballot in areas that have changed, you know, in one case, I think dramatically from a demographic standpoint, what is your level of concern, I suppose, in these districts not being able to maintain them on the right? And I know that this is more on the Senate side, but it's the same issue that you're dealing with.
Yeah, I think you got to look at the districts as well. Like the district that Judy Warnick, who's great, by the way, represents, is a ruby red district. I mean, she's going to be replaced by another Republican, maybe another House member that's currently in the 13th district. And you got members like Suzanne Schmidt in the 4th district in Spokane Valley and Jenny Graham in the other side of Spokane that are now leaving and moving on. They will be replaced by great Republican candidates like Jonathan Bingle, who is a Spokane City Council member. Very excited to have him in our caucus coming soon. And so many other great members, but it's the swing district members like Michelle Valdez, where we really got to work really extra hard to make sure we get Katie Cornell and David Olson in there.
What is your message to listeners who have said many, many times this is all a lost cause? And I can't say I blame their attitude per se. I totally get it. It seems like we work really, really hard and then we end up losing elections. But then when you look at the numbers, when we lose, it's by a razor-thin margin. And you can easily explain that away by people just not voting on our side.
Yeah, look, I mean, here's the thing. It's always darkest just before the dawn, right? And it feels so hopeless right now. And I feel that too sometimes. But they just passed the most unpopular bill in state history, that income tax. And that is our golden ticket to fight back amongst many other things that they've done. People are feeling the squeeze. We can absolutely do this. I mean, when Donald Trump got shot in the head, in the ear, he didn't just lay down and die. He got back up and he said, fight, fight, fight. So what I would say to people is this state is worth fighting for. Its people is worth fighting for. Never give up, never surrender, not ever. And you go and you fight for it and you go use the tools that we've been given. And hey, you know, there's no magic wand. There's no magic solution. There's no silver bullet. You just got to do the hard work. You got to roll up your sleeves and get it done. And that's what I'm committed to do until November, where, by the way, we will also have on the ballot a parents' rights initiative and also a Protect Girls Sports initiative. I mean, and potentially even an income tax initiative. So we'll see how that all turns out. But if that all comes to fruition, the stars are aligning for conservatives in Washington. And we have to be a big tent party. We have to get moderates. We have to get people in the suburbs, especially women, on our side on a lot of different issues. And they agree with us on the issues. We just need to be able to get them to trust us and vote for us. And I think that tide is turning. I hear about it every single day.
That last piece is so important because when you look at the actual issues, take away Republican versus Democrat, we end up losing that usually statewide just because we're deeply blue. But when people just judge the issues or the candidates without party identification, we win that 9.5 times out of 10.
Yeah, absolutely we do. They agree with us on crime, they agree with us on taxes and spending, and they agree with us on a whole host of very important issues. But sadly, a lot of people look at the letter after your name on the ballot. We got to get past that. We got to push past the national politics as well. And I think that with the income tax and the largest tax increases in state history and so many other things, people tend to vote from their bellies. And when they're hungry, or when they're having a hard time with their family budgets, they will make different decisions. And I've heard so many times, thousands of times, over the course of just the last couple months of people who always voted Democrat and are saying enough is enough. I'm voting Republican, even if I don't agree with them 100% of the time. We can't have more of the 40-year one-party rule in this state anymore. And I think that's what people are waking up to. And we could do a whole lot better.
We can, but we got to make sure that we defend the seats that are up for re-election. Yours is going to be one of them in the 35th district. This is Mason County, but you represent Allen. We've been talking with State Representative Travis Couture. His website, traviscouture.com, Couture. Make sure you are doing what you can to get out the word. For those of you who don't live in the area, that's okay. You can talk to your friends and family members who live in his district. Make sure you can also, if you can, donate over at traviscouture.com, Couture. Travis, thank you so much for stopping by.
Hey, thanks, Jason.
You're listening to the Jason Rantz Show on this Monday afternoon. When we come back, we're going to dive into the big local and a crazy story out of Squim. Also, don't forget SeattleRed.com for news and opinion without any of the left-wing spin. We are having a killer month. I want to have an even bigger month. Yeah, go to SeattleRed.com. You're listening to the Jason Rantz Show.
The liberal left spin machine lives on the left-wing media outlets. You know the ones.
I think that if they're going to haul the Clintons in to testify, then they should haul Trump as well.
It's also where you can find Jason Rantz.
So you say that Donald Trump committed a crime?
No, I'm not saying that Donald Trump committed a crime.
Defending our conservative values.
Is it possible they didn't find anything and that's the reason why they didn't bring it?
The same way he does every day, 3 to 7 on Seattle Red.
Our local tax expert and advocate, Greg Nunn, understands the pressure that comes from owing money to the IRS. Don't let that pressure build. Call None Better Tax Resolution. From stress to success with IRS Solutions. Google NUNN. None Better Tax Resolution.
Well, there's nothing I hate worse than being cold. And if your house is feeling a bit drafty or the floors of the main level are way too cold on your feet, that's probably because your crawl space and attic don't have enough insulation. It's probably making your furnace work overtime. So now you're spending more money as well. Well, how about a free and easy way to learn if you need better insulation? Just schedule a free corner-to-corner inspection of your crawl space and attic with Crawl Pros. It's exactly what I did. They'll show up to your house. They'll go where you don't want to, certainly where I didn't want to, and they'll tell you if you got any problems with your crawl space, your attic, and especially your insulation. If they do discover your home is under or improperly insulated, they'll show you all the utility rebates as well to help you get that work done correctly and affordably. If you're a PSE customer and your home was built before 1990, you could receive a rebate to cover up to 95% of the cost. Make your home more comfortable. Save on your energy bill with Crawl Pros. If you're worried that anything's going on in your crawl space or attic, critters, mold, water, plumbing issues, call Crawl Pros or go to crawlpros.com.
Jackson Hewitt has a great tax prep deal, $149 or less. Missing out is like ignoring the check engine light in your car. You'll regret it. Seriously, the price is only $149 or less, no matter how complicated, so don't wait. Like when you get a password expires today alert or you're shopping online and there's only one item left. It's like your taxes are in the cart, just complete the purchase. Hurry, this deal for $149 or less is like your phone at 1%. It's about to power down. Limited time offer for new clients on federal returns. Participating locations only. Terms at jacksonhewitt.com/149.
Snapshot from Progressive wasn't created for just anybody. Oh no, we made it for you. Smooth accelerators. When that light turns green, you're off. Like a warm knife through firm butter. Going from 0 to the speed limit in an appropriate amount of time. Sure, your car has horsepower, but your horses prance around as silky smooth as your right foot. Fancy Prancerton. With Snapshot, safe drivers like you get personalized rates based on your driving habits. Sign up today at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Snapshot not available in California or from all agents.
You know, retirement is supposed to be a time of rest and relaxation. But every week I get calls from seniors who are stressed out because their cost of living keeps going up. They love their home and they want to stay in it, but they're struggling with rising property taxes, monthly bills, and monthly mortgage payments if they have one. Hi, I'm Steve Teitler, owner of Best Mortgage, a local family-owned company. I specialize in the reverse mortgage, which allows seniors to tap into your home equity for tax-free cash to pay off your mortgage, pay off debts, and maybe put some extra money in the bank. A reverse mortgage is a great option for some people, but it's not right for everyone. So give me a call and you'll talk directly to me in person or over the phone for honest advice you can trust. Search for Best Mortgage on the web or call us at 425-649-6000. You'll talk to me, not an AI robot. Best Mortgage, 425-649-6000.
The liberal left spin machine lives on the left-wing media outlets. You know the ones.
Iran may or may not be a bad actor, but they are a bad actor.
That's also where you can find Jason Rantz.
Okay, it's not they may or may not be a bad actor. They are a bad actor.
Defending our conservative values.
But it is not a discussion at this point for any serious person to say that Iran might be a good actor.
The same way he does every day, 3 to 7 on Seattle Red on 770 and the Seattle Red app.
Snoqualmie, Mercer Island, Des Moines.
This is the Big Local on the Jason Rantz Show.
Shoreline, Woodinville, Burien.
Stories about you, not about Seattle.
Hey, look at the time on a Monday afternoon, 4:30. That means it's time for the Big Local, brought to you by the Scott Jennings Show. Heard weeknights from 8 to 10 right here on Seattle Red, streaming at seattlered.com. This is the part of the show where we completely ignore stories coming out of Seattle and instead focus all of our attention on the communities you live in and care about most. We start in Sequim, where we don't get to do very many stories out of Sequim. I imagine there's a lot of locals who wish we didn't have to do this story, but it is a crazy one. Police arrested 3 people and seized large amounts of what they believe are narcotics and firearms during a 2-day drug investigation out in Clallam County. It continued on March 12th after the arrests the previous day of 2 residents of the county. This according to the Olympic Peninsula Narcotics Enforcement Team, OPNET. They say over at Como News that detectives got information that several people from Kitsap County were staying in a room at the Seven Cedars Casino in Sequim, and they were allegedly selling some kind of drug or drugs across the entire county, not just this particular, casino or anything. They say it was happening. This was kind of like the HQ, I guess, for this operation. Investigators, they say, developed a probable cause to arrest a 35-year-old male who's a Kitsap County resident for delivery of a controlled substance. And they were able to, upon looking at casino surveillance footage, located a 35-year-old man plus 3 other individuals who were suspected in all of this. They did a search after the arrests. They say they found 196 plus grams of fentanyl packaged for distribution. They say they found a scale, packaging materials, and 2 loaded pistol magazines. A search warrant was then executed on the suspect's car. They found, they say, a .45 caliber pistol plus ammo. He was prohibited from possessing firearms due to a prior felony conviction, which that just is crazy talk to me. I can't believe this guy has a history. That doesn't make sense. I'm awfully suspicious. Maybe this is one of the fake news stories that Brendan Carr is talking about. This doesn't sound like this man. They say he also had convictions of unlawful possession of a firearm and delivery or manufacture of a controlled substance. He ended up getting booked on these charges. They also arrested a 43-year-old Kitsap County resident after a search of a vehicle containing his luggage uncovered, they say, fentanyl, a digital scale with residue, plus records of drug sales. Not that I want to give out any tips to people who are purchasing drugs or selling drugs. It feels to me like you probably should not have a written account for all the crimes that you committed, allegedly. It feels like that might be a little bit of a mistake. Maybe an unintended consequence. Like, kudos to the people who like to take notes and make sure that they have everything in order. I'm constantly telling Jackson, hey, why don't you take notes of what I'm telling you? He's like, no, I'll remember. And then he never remembers anything. No, I'll remember this time, I swear. And then he forgets. And then we're at the point where I forget about what he forgot about. And then we're just a big mess. So on the one hand, you could learn, Jackson, something from these alleged drug dealers. But also that just seems rather silly to put that all in, to put it all in writing. And if you're going to put it all in writing, maybe separate it out from all the other, alleged evidence of your alleged crimes. Dear God. They also found on this person a 9mm pistol and a bolt-action shotgun, which I will say is a very intimidating-looking gun. They said he was also prohibited from possessing firearms because of prior felony convictions. Shocker. They also say they arrested a 41-year-old Key Peninsula woman after she was allegedly found carrying a 9mm pistol without a concealed weapon permit. A 4th woman was detained, questioned, but then ultimately released. Now, again, this went across 2 different days of this investigation, and all in, they found nearly 262 grams of suspected fentanyl. They say suspected because they have to put it through a drug test to confirm, but it appears that's what it was. 515 plus grams of meth, a little over 30 grams of cocaine, 147 Suboxone strips, multiple firearms, scales, packaging materials, and a little under $19,000 in cash. All three are being held on $250,000 of bail. You know, this is kudos to the investigators for finding this out and getting these drugs off the streets, because that's a lot of drugs that will kill a whole lot of people, like a lot. And we have to stop pretending that these kinds of stories aren't happening all the time, and an indication that people still in Washington State think that they're going to get away with this kind of alleged action. Again, I understand it takes a long time. It's very difficult to put toothpaste back in a toothpaste container. I almost fumbled that. I get it, right? Like, it's going to take some time before people truly understand that the culture of lawlessness and the drug criminalization is not okay anymore here. Maybe it's okay in Seattle or Tacoma, maybe Spokane, but Sequim, yeah, they don't mess around in Clallam County, thankfully. Meanwhile, nearby, Olympia is doing what progressive cities always seem to do when they run out of real problems to solve. They invent new civil rights causes, all for, I think you could justify this, call this lifestyle politics. Oregon Public Broadcasting, of all places, had a story about the city of Olympia becoming the first city in the state to move explicit protections for polyamorous people. They added, quote, diverse family and relationship structures to its anti-discrimination law. We previously reported on this when they were discussing it, when they were debating it. And one of the polyamorous groups, or a spokesperson for the group, yelled at me on Twitter because he didn't like what I was saying. But I was right. This is absurd. They're now amending their housing code to cover discrimination tied to family structure or consensual relationships. Presumably legal consensual relationships. Now, the part about all of this that should bother us normal people, this isn't being sold as some sort of fringe activism. It's being packaged as if it's about basic fairness, the whole just live and let live philosophy. Don't worry, they tell us. It's just a little definition. It doesn't mean anything. It doesn't cost anything. That's what activists always say right before they turn a private choice into a protected class, and then they dare you to object so they can sue you and then claim to be even bigger victims than they already claim to be. Just know that when you create legal protections around polyamory, which is a choice that people are making, a choice that loose moral people would be making, perhaps, you're not ending the conversation. They understand it, that they're starting the conversation, because advocates are already talking about plural domestic partnerships as a next step. They want city by city laws to get pushed until Olympia lawmakers just offer statewide protection. So they start in Olympia, where obviously it's a city that is independently governed, but it's, you know, the host of our state capitol building, right? The legislature is there. They're going to know about this, and there's going to be a lot of pressure for this to spread. It's not going to stay in Olympia. That it started Olympia, I suppose, is not that big of a shock. I mean, Olympia has become insanely left-wing, like insane. But it will get to the city we don't talk about in this segment, and eventually it'll get all around the state. And, you know, the normal people out in Sequim or Yelm or, you know, most of Whatcom County, maybe not Bremer, like, they'll say, no, get out of here. They'll laugh you out of the room. But the Seattles and Tacomas, Everett, Spokanes, they might say yes. Vancouver might say yes. And that's going to force pressure at the state level to formalize this across the board. Once you create it, you can't just easily take it back. Just know that this is happening despite actual problems in Olympia needing some level of addressing. But, you know, I guess people don't really care all too much about the crime and the homelessness there anymore. This is about more than that. Finally, in Quilcene, a house cat wandered into a stranger's home. That's not abnormal until you realize that this was a cat that had just been shot. The calico cat is named Penny, is now recovering at Center Valley Animal Rescue after being discovered on Tuesday of last week at Port Hadlock. The animal arrived emaciated, suffering from severe injuries. And initially, veterinarians were all like, we think this cat might have gotten hit by a car. But then they got x-rays and they found something that was pretty disgusting. The cat had been shot in the head. Sarah is the director of Center Valley Animal Rescue. She spoke with King 5.
You can see those light-colored little white specks in there, and that's the little shrapnel. Really apparent that this was a gunshot wound. You can see this is her bullet entry wound up here. There's just no excuse for shooting a cat. It's just cruel.
It's, of course, cruel. It's disturbing beyond belief. The bullet broke Penny's jaw, severed her tongue, and part of the reason why she was emaciated was because she's not able to eat on her own at this point. Now, hopefully, she will get the kind of treatment and reconstruction surgery to the extent you do that on cats, where she can eat on her own. But right now, she's being placed on a feeding tube, and she's beginning intensive treatment. This is not the only case of animal cruelty recently that we've seen in this area. Sarah Penhaligon, again, the director at this animal rescue, told King 5 that less than a month ago, there was another incident, but this time it was with a seal.
Both of these animals had been shot a while before they were found and had horrible infections going on. Yeah, we really want to figure out who's doing this in our community.
They have a $500 reward being offered for information leading to an arrest of whoever shot the cat. And by the way, that's according to King 5. That I appreciate. I don't like the whole, we'll give you $500 if we arrest and convict. No, I have no control over the conviction, but I might have control over you capturing the person. And that, I think, is reasonable to get a $500 award for. Or reward? Oh, reward. Disturbing. I'm not a cat person, but this is the kind of animal cruelty story that just makes me sick to my stomach. What the hell is wrong with people? Seriously, what is wrong with people? They don't even have an owner. Apparently, Penny was microchipped, but they haven't been able to contact the owners yet. And I don't know what that suggests. Maybe they just can't get a hold of the owners right now, or, these are these are people who just abandoned the cat and, then it was shot by. So I don't know. But these stories are just so egregious, so disturbing, and I hate them. I hope they find whomever's responsible or the people responsible. And if that happens, we will be there to call them out. 1-800-465-8770 for your text. 1-800-465-8770. When we come back, our system is down, so you can't vote. So we'll tell you about a CEO that just announced he's leaving the state of Washington. He's headed to Wyoming. We'll tell you why. It's going to come maybe a little bit of a shock because this is not directly tied to the income tax. It plays a role. We'll explain when we come back on the Jason Rantz Show. Don't forget, buying a used car can be stressful, which is why the Sunset Auto family is taking the stress off your plate with a 48-hour used vehicle exchange policy. Pick out your car or truck, drive it for a couple days, and if it's not the right fit, they're going to help you find one that is. No gimmicks, no loopholes, because you just get more at Sunset. And people do like that. SunsetAutoFamily.com.
Get in the zone, AutoZone.
John always listens to his truck. So when his brakes start talking, he goes to AutoZone, where a helpful AutoZoner gets him the right parts. If John has time to put them in, he borrows a kit with Loan-A-Tool. And if he doesn't, he gets a free shop referral. No hassles, just help. Everything you need, nothing you don't.
Get in the zone, AutoZone.
Deposit required for Loan-A-Tool. Restrictions apply.
Jackson Hewitt has a great tax prep deal, $149 or less. Missing out is like ignoring the check engine light in your car. You'll regret it. Seriously, the price is only $149 or less, no matter how complicated. So don't wait. Like when you get a password expires today alert, or you're shopping online and there's only one item left. It's like your taxes are in the cart. Just complete the purchase. Hurry! This deal for $149 or less is like your phone at 1%. It's about to power down. Limited time offer for new clients on federal returns. Participating locations only. Terms at jacksonhewitt.com/149.
Spring is right around the corner, but the perfect time to start your outdoor project is right now. Natural Design Landscaping has been serving Seattle and the East Side for nearly 30 years. They design, build, and maintain stunning outdoor spaces, from full makeovers to weekly maintenance. Beat the spring rush and get your yard project started today. Mention Seattle Red and get 10% off your first service. Visit naturaldesignlandscape.com to schedule your consultation. Natural Design Landscaping. Let's build something wonderful together.
John Curley here. Did you know a new heat pump is a smart choice for total home
comfort? That's right. One heat pump does the work of a furnace and air conditioner. And if your system's over 12 years old, it's on borrowed time, and it could be costing you up to 20% more than today's ultra-efficient models. Get heating and cooling for the price of AC. Visit HomeComfortAlliance.com for heating, cooling, plumbing, and electrical. Call the comfort people. Home Comfort Alliance. HomeComfortAlliance.com.
Do you like helping others? Become a Shiva volunteer. In Lewis County, join the hundreds of volunteers across Washington state who help over 90,000 people each year with their Medicare options and questions. You don't have to know Medicare. We'll teach you. And if you're bilingual, even better. For more information and how to apply, call Shiva at 1-800-562-6900 or go to insurance.wa.gov.
Sponsored by the Office of the Insurance Commissioner and aired by the Washington State Association of Broadcasters and this station.
If you need security for your event or business, contact Security Services Northwest. From armed and unarmed officers to advanced remote monitoring, they've been doing it all since 1977. Go to ssnwhq.com for Security Services Northwest.
Hey, this is Pete from Home Matters. Tune in this weekend when we'll talk with local business owners about everything in and around your home. Join us on Saturdays from 2 to 3 right here on Seattle Red, or listen to the podcast on mynorthwest.com.
The liberal left spin machine lives on the left-wing media outlets. You know the ones.
Iran may or may not be a bad actor, but they are a bad actor.
That's also where you can find Jason Rantz.
Okay, it's not they may or may not be a bad actor. They are a bad actor.
Defending our conservative values.
But it is not a discussion at this point for any serious person to say that Iran might be a good actor.
The same way he does every day, 3 to 7 on Seattle Red on 770 and the Seattle Red app. You pick the topic on the Jason Rantz Show.
Indeed, you normally do, but this time, because our system is down. Ahead of me, headed to New York. I'll be on CNN tomorrow night and Wednesday night from 7 to 8 local time, Pacific time, debating liberals and getting yelled at by liberals. So that'll be fun. I will be broadcasting tomorrow through Wednesday from the New York studios, just as an FYI. I hope that that's fine with everyone. I haven't heard anyone complaining about anything of me traveling so much since I'm actually doing the radio show. Other than Jackson. Jackson gets all upset every single time I travel. He's like, but it's not fun that I can't see you directly when you're hosting the show. And I say, you know what? Not all heroes wear capes. You're a hero, my friend. I appreciate that, but I think you're going to be able to get through it together. He cries a little bit, and then we move on. Anyway, Mark Barros spent about 40 years living in Washington State. Loved it here. But then he said, the math doesn't work anymore. And he decided to leave. He's also taking his business with him. So he's the CEO of a business based in, I think it's in Pioneer Square, called Moment. It is a mobile photography company known for camera lenses, filters, camera bags, things like that. So on the technical side of things for photographers and videographers. But he announced on X, I think it was on Friday, that he is taking the company to Wyoming. And you could look at this and say, this is a pointed data point in a growing pile of data points about how far this state is falling and how much further we have to go. So we obviously have the unconstitutional 9.9% income tax that was passed on earners above $1 million. That's going to be expanded to everyone. Don't you worry about that. It's clearly unconstitutional. They did it anyway. Okay, fine. Fair enough. But that's not actually what drove him out of the state as a business owner. In fact, he says personally, he's not even impacted directly by the state income tax. It's not that. He said, when you add up all the costs to run a business in Washington, we can't afford it. You can build a remote team and reopen in Wyoming, which is precisely what it is he did. He wrote, after 40 years born and raised, I left Washington. Moment is leaving this month as well. I'm not even a millionaire affected by this tax, but when you add up all the costs to run a business in Washington, we can't afford it. You can build a remote team and reopen in Washington, removing all of these costs. And he goes through all of these different costs. And again, keep in mind, this is not some small business that just popped up yesterday and didn't quite understand what it was to operate in the state of Washington. They've been doing this since 2014. So over a decade, they've been here locally as this company. And they said, we just can't do this anymore. We're not insulated by scale the way some other larger businesses can be. We're a small business, and this is hard for us. You say you want to protect us, but you're not. You're not. And he's calling out a specific law that we talked about last year. It wasn't passed this legislative session. It was passed last legislative session. It was Senate Bill 5814. And it expanded retail sales and B&O tax to cover digital advertising and digital business services. And it hits businesses that are incorporated in Washington state with a 10% sales tax on those digital purchases, regardless of where employees are located or where the ads run. So we talked to a Spokane business person last year who runs digital advertising agency or digital advertising company. And he points out it could be some company that hires him from Frankfurt, Germany. And they say, hey, Spokane-based company, or just really Washington-based digital ad company, I need you to run Facebook ads. And they say, okay, great, we're going to charge you whatever the fee is. But now they're hit with a 10% tax on that, even if the ads aren't running in Washington. They're running in Frankfurt, Germany. That's how this tax would work. And so he writes, what pushed us out was the recent change to sales and use tax. It used to be you paid this tax on physical things you bought for your business, similar to a sales tax. Now you pay it on 100% of the items you buy. Think Shopify, AWS, Google. Even if your team is remote and you will pay 10% sales tax on 100% of these purchases, no matter where people are located. But the real kicker was they expanded this law to be a tax that applies to all digital advertising. Run Facebook ads in Germany, you pay Washington state a 10% tax. Overnight, that's a $200,000 a year tax that didn't exist last year. Again, not even based in where your ads run or where your team is. Incorporated in Washington state, you will pay this tax. Again, that doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense. And for some, I remember talking to that Spokane business owner who said he might just move over to Coeur d'Alene, live in Idaho, which is, close enough to his home in Spokane. He can just commute and be incorporated there. And now this is a company, Moment, that's saying, yeah, we're not going to Idaho. We're going to Wyoming. We're done with this. They're going to a place that's friendlier. And, we talked last week, I think it was maybe a week and a half ago, those Snohomish County small businesses put out a joint letter to Democrats in Olympia saying, you're killing us here. You're going to kill us. That was specific to the income tax. But the reality is we know that this is going to add up. Later on in the show, next hour, 5:30, we're going to be talking with Zach Abraham. He is the owner, or he's the CIO and principal over at Bulwark Capital Management. And he manages a lot of money. I think like a little bit over $1 billion. And he's saying, I'm done. I'm not doing this anymore. They took all of our trust that we had in them. They ruined it with this income tax. We don't think it's going to stop. And he's leaving. He's leaving the state. And he'll talk a little bit to us about his decision, not just for himself and his family, but the decision that others are making in the same space. I mean, he is on the board of a tech company based in Woodinville. And they just had a meeting last week, and he told me that they all said exactly the same thing. They're leaving. And he doesn't think that this is some sort of bluff. Danny Westneat in the Seattle Times seems to think that these are bluffs, despite the fact that many people have already left. Jeff Bezos and Howard Schultz, the biggest names who've left. But these people are leaving. And it's not just the billionaires, it's the millionaires. And they're taking with them. Just think about what this Moment exit means. For the sake of the argument, let's just presume, because he made reference to having remote work, let's just say he keeps all of his employees here. This is a guy, a CEO, he's taking his own income elsewhere, but he's likely going to stop buying everything that he gets from Washington, the moment he sets up shop completely in Wyoming. He's going to also want to support his Wyoming business partners now, or community partners in business. And that means vendors. It also means like just some of the basic stuff. I know we don't think about it in these terms. And granted, at the macro level, it's not all that important. But the micro level, it is. When you've got a business in, say, Seattle or Tacoma or Bellevue, whatever it is, anywhere you have a business, you might sometimes have meetings that you're going to cater. You've got some business clients coming in. You want them to meet the crew. You've got maybe you're doing training in-house. You bring someone over, and it's for everybody, and you provide lunch or breakfast or both. Snacks throughout the day, all those things. Well, you buy that from a local caterer. You go to sometimes just a sandwich shop and you make a big order, or you go to a local caterer who then delivers you the food. You pay for the food. You give a tip to the delivery person. Everyone's happy. You're going to the local coffee shop to buy that big jug of coffee for everyone so they stay awake during the meeting. You're going to the local Staples or Office Depot or whatever to buy some supplies for your meeting. You have an account with Costco in Seattle or Tacoma that sends you over everything you need in the business. These are all things that you have developed in the local economy, that you've spurred in the local economy that no longer exists. And will a business go under because they no longer get that, 4-time, 5-time a year catering order? No, they're not going to be impacted that much by that one decision. But when that one decision is dozens and dozens and dozens of decisions, well, all of a sudden, let's just say 10 businesses leave. Well, that's 5 times each. That's 50 orders you don't get over the course of the year. That starts to hurt you, especially when we're talking about low margin businesses. Then it starts to hurt. And we're just supposed to pretend that that doesn't matter, that these are all just greedy business people who are deciding to leave. But they're not greedy. They're smart. They want to survive as a business. Because the reality is, it's hard enough to survive right now. There was a story over at King 5 about multiple businesses in the Magnolia neighborhood of Seattle just got hit with a string of burglaries and break-ins. This is not the first time that this has happened, but thousands of dollars worth of damage and losses. Hannah is the person from Vixen Collection, which I think is just a clothing store. And she told King 5 she was broken into. She found out about it when she got to work early Friday morning.
It's terrifying. It's sickening. I would say it puts you on edge. Like, you're on that fight or flight mode immediately because you're wanting to see, what was taken. Are my people okay? Is everything safe? And then when you find out that it's not, it's jarring.
Sucks.
They wiped us clean.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, it's shocking. So at that point, if you're going to go and wipe a whole jewelry case, what else are you capable of? If you see something, say something. It's not bystander effect. Don't let it go unnoticed. Say something.
Great advice. Now, the good news in a pretty crummy situation is that the Seattle police were able to pull a clear image of the suspect's face, the female suspect's face, after they looked at the surveillance footage. So that's good, at least. They say that witnesses saw a white van in the area around the time of and after the break-in. So they're thinking that there could be potentially a connection. And, this is another one of those businesses, thank God, that the management understands. They put out a statement to King 5 saying, the city council has hamstrung the police department, making it unable for us to enforce even basic crimes. Anytime, given day or night, they can steal without any consequences. That is a statement that is aggressive, rightfully so, that has unlikely to have come out 5-6 years ago. Now they're feeling comfortable. Maybe they specifically were always comfortable, but a lot of businesses were not comfortable saying anything. They didn't want to get attacked by the activists in the community. Kudos to them for speaking up about this and telling the truth about what's going on. I feel awful for them. 1-800-465-8770 if you want to send me a text. 1-800-465-8770. You're listening to The Jason Rantz Show on Seattle Red, online at seattlered.com.
Insulation rebates from PSE are at historic highs. American Crawl Space and Pest Services gave over $3 million in PSE insulation rebates last year, more than any contractor in Washington. Homeowners, business owners, and PSE trust American Crawl Space and Pest Services. Was your home built before 1990? Visit AmericanCrawl.com to see how much you can save on replacing your insulation.
American Crawl, the heroes you call.
Hey, it's Jason Rantz. Sunset Ford's been telling you the truth about pricing for years. All Ford dealers pay exactly the same from the factory to the penny. No secret deals, no hidden discounts. Nobody gets a better price. That's a fact. So how can some dealers like Sunset Ford actually sell for less? Well, it's simple economics. Dealers with lower overhead can offer lower prices. Think about it. Dealerships in Seattle or Bellevue, Tacoma, they've got massive buildings, big payrolls, sky-high rent. That's a lot of cost to cover before they ever even sell you a car or truck. But Sunset Ford's in Sumner. Smaller town, lower cost, same Fords. That's how you save. And with warranty protection for life and oil changes for life on every qualifying vehicle, Sunset gives you more than anyone else. No Ford dealer anywhere can get you a new Ford for less than Sunset Ford of Sumner. You just get more at Sunset Ford. And people do like that. Online at sunsetautofamily.com.
It's John Curley. If you're having joint pain, this will interest you. This Thursday night at 6, Dr. Mark Wagner, MD, is having a free live webinar to talk about stem cell therapy.
I'm really looking forward to this live webinar to educate on how using your own stem cells can be an extremely successful method to help regenerate native tissue in rotator cuffs, meniscus tears, and reduce pain in osteoarthritic joints.
What joints have you seen really good success with?
Shoulders, elbows, hips, knees, even wrists and ankles. And in this live webinar, we'll tell you all about the procedure, how simple and safe it is using your own stem cells, and how we determine if you're a candidate.
Learn about stem cell therapy with Dr. Mark Wagner, MD, one of the most experienced in the country with over 20,000 stem cell procedures. Go pain-free in 2026. Join his free live stem cell webinar this Thursday night at 6. Register at drmarkwagnermd.com. That's drmarkwagnermd.com.
Seattle Red on 770 KTTH Seattle, 97.3 KIRO FM, HD3 Tacoma Seattle, 94.5 K233 DT Eastway, 33 BU Seattle.
It's no longer a bully. I'm Lisa Lacera, Fox News. Those words from President Trump 3 weeks into attacks on Iran from the U.S. and Israel. And he says U.S. intelligence was surprised at Iran's response.
President Trump says he was not briefed about the potential of Iran retaliating against regional neighbors like Qatar, the UAE, and Kuwait.
All these countries are getting hit. There was no expert that would say that was going to happen. It's not a question of like, gee, should you have known? And if we did know, big deal. I mean, we have to do what we have to do.
The president also says the U.S. has decimated much of Iran's ability to launch attacks, including targeting its Navy, Air Force, and ballistic missiles. Asked if that meant the war could end within days, President Trump replied, it's likely to be wrapped up soon.
Fox's Jared Halpern at the White House. House Democratic leader Hakeem Jeffries continues to slam the administration's actions against Iran.
They failed to prepare for Iran's actions in the Strait of Hormuz. They failed to prepare as it relates to the fact that thousands of Americans were stranded for days, if not weeks, in the Middle East with no plan by the State Department to evacuate American citizens.
And Jeffrey says the administration has not explained why we are striking Iran. An Afghan government spokesman says the number of dead from an airstrike by Pakistan on a hospital in the capital of Kabul that's treating drug users has risen to 400. The Supreme Court will hear arguments on the Trump administration's attempt to remove protected status of refugees from certain countries, including Haiti and Syria.
Protected status was established by Congress in 1990, giving foreign nationals fleeing situations such as natural disasters or war the right to remain in the U.S. by designation of the Department of Homeland Security. DHS Secretary Kristi Noem signaled an end to that in Haiti's case last year.
Fox's Gernal Scott, America's listening to Fox News.
I move mountains for a living. Literally. That means I don't carry hand lotion, and when it comes to serious heartburn, I don't mess around with anything but Rolaids. Rolaids' dual-active formula has calcium carbonate and magnesium hydroxide that relieves heartburn fast. Yeah, you heard right. 2 actives for that powerful relief. And the best part? The roll fits right here in my pocket, so I can get back to moving mountains.
Rolade spells powerful relief. Read each label. Use as directed. Keep out of reach of children.
Hear that? That's Mike. He took ZQL Pure Z's, so now he's sleeping soundly on a Sunday night. ZQL Pure Z's are fast-acting melatonin gummies with a complementary botanical blend to help Mike get the sleep he needs to wake up refreshed and ready to conquer Monday.
Let's do this Monday.
ZQL Pure Z's, just for sleep. Really great sleep. These statements have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. These products are not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease. Use as directed.
Coach! The yellow light! I'm walking here! I'm walking!
Good afternoon and welcome to the Jason Rantz Show on Seattle Red 770 AM. We are streaming online at seattlered.com. Apologize as we work through some video upgrades in our studio to our software, so the software might be a little bit glitchy today, and then tomorrow I'm out in New York. But don't worry, We are here providing you fresh content as we aim to do Monday through Friday, 3 to 7 p.m. right here on Seattle Red. We got a lot to get to. Zach Abraham is the CIO and principal of the Bulwark Capital Management Group. It's local. He's responsible for a whole lot of money and pays a whole lot of taxes, and he's saying bye to the state of Washington because of the income tax. He'll explain all of his reasoning and what this is going to mean for our local economy at 5:30. But before that, the NBA might deliver not just a basketball team to Seattle, but at least temporarily, some homeless sweeps. That's what's trending.
What's trending? The sports ball.
According to ESPN, the NBA is moving closer to expansion in Las Vegas and Seattle. There's going to be a vote next week that will take place at the Board of Governors meeting, and it's to start to explore adding expansion teams exclusively to those two markets with a target start date for 2028 to the 2029 season, which isn't very far away. That is 2 years away, and that's awesome. And the report from Shams Charania says that there's momentum for stakeholders to approve what they think will be bids in the $7 to $10 billion range per team. So that's obviously really, really great. They said the league source, Percomo, said the number did not come from the NBA offices and there would be no timeline set for a final decision. But if history is any guide, the last time the NBA voted to expand to Charlotte in December of 2002, the franchise started in 2004. So again, they're putting a little bit of caveats out there to this news, but there's no reason to believe that Seattle or Las Vegas would be any different than those other markets, unless there's some, development in demanding a standalone stadium rather than using Virtue Signal Arena, formerly Key Arena in the Queen Anne neighborhood. I'm presuming that's what is going to happen, but who knows? Anything is possible, I suppose. This is obviously good news if you are a fan of basketball. Now, I'm even if you're not a fan of basketball, I'm not a fan of basketball, don't particularly care about basketball. However, I look at this and say, this is awesome news. I want to have another team here, a major team, even a little team I'll take because it's good for the local economy and we could use a boost in our local economy. You can't just have a reliance on the tech sector. You need to have other businesses that end up surviving and thriving. And one way to do that is to bring a whole bunch of fans from not even just across the state of Washington, but around the country to come here, enjoy the game, but then shop at our local retail spots. This is really great news overall. But there's an added benefit that the NBA would bring much more than just a basketball team to Seattle. The city might actually clean up downtown, not because residents demanded it, not because businesses begged for it, certainly not because families deserve a clean and safe downtown. It might just happen because the NBA is coming back or looking to come back, and, beggars can't be choosers, I suppose. I'll take that kind of pressure because that's what this is really a story about. This is a story about pressure. Political pressure, the kind of political pressure that the activist class has spent years avoiding in the city of Seattle until, of course, they can't deny it anymore, right? That's really what this is about. Once you're asking billionaires and corporate sponsors and national media outlets and tens of thousands of fans to pour into downtown Seattle, the excuses that they usually give for inaction in the region, they kind of just stop working. Suddenly, it's a lot harder to shrug off the open air drug use and open air drug sales, which again, I saw earlier this morning as I was dropping off D'Artagnan, my dog. I got a dog a few years ago, to his boarding as I'm going to New York soon. Like there were encampments all over, tents all over, and there was an open air drug deal. I'm near certain that a druggie thought I was a drug dealer dealing from my car because I was in the car and it was running. And I was plugging in my phone before I was leaving after I dropped off the dog. And I saw this guy make eye contact with me. And I'm almost certain he thought I was a drug dealer because that's usually where I parked is usually where I see the drug dealer park. Yeah, great. But you can't just shrug that off anymore. You can't shrug off this broader sense of disorder that progressives have spent years normalizing and telling us that we're the problem. Oh, this is just a normal city. This is how normal cities are. This is not how normal cities are. This is how normal big Democrat-run cities are, maybe. But this is not the norm, and it shouldn't be accepted as the norm. The NBA is a business. It's not a social experiment. And if you're expecting somewhere between $7 and $10 billion of investments into a franchise, they're not doing it because they want to showcase a city that looks like a warning label for progressive governance, right? That's not what their intent is. They want safe streets. They want a functioning downtown core. They want fans to spend money and not worry about stepping over needles on the way to a game. And isn't this really how Seattle tends to operate? Think about it. When you've got your in-laws coming over, and some are bigger pains in the backside than others, but you've got in-laws coming over, and you find the vacuum all of a sudden. And they show up, and they look at your home and like, oh, wow, this is really clean. But it's all a facade. It's clean in that moment because you made the choice to clean it up. You wanted to impress the in-laws. I imagine that that's going to happen here with the NBA. Again, it'll be short term, but beggars can't be choosers, and I will take short term. But remember when the MLB All-Star Week showed up to town? Boy, did they clean up downtown Seattle. They couldn't quite get the urine smell out of downtown Seattle, the kind so pungent you can taste it in the back of your throat. Weren't able to completely get rid of that, but it was clean. They just moved the homeless elsewhere, but at least it was clean. So we know that they can make this work. We can't pretend that the city of Seattle, or any city, frankly, is just completely powerless. They're not powerless, they're selective. And I think they'll be selective in cleaning up the city for a short period of time around all of this. And it could be a short period of time that ends up getting redone multiple times. Let's just say, I'm making this up, they vote next week to support expansion, whatever the timeline is, they give the green light. Well, they're going to have NBA down here. They're going to have big press events. They're going to have big press conferences. The mayor is going to be involved. All these people are going to be involved. They're going to clean up every single time you got one of those events. Now, the radius of the cleanup will depend, I suppose, but you can bet your dollar that 2028 season comes around, they're going to clean up this entire area. And that could be sustained for several weeks to maybe even several months. And if the NBA really is just one vote away, that might be the best news we've had in years, not just because of the Sonics coming back or a basketball team coming back, but because the threat of embarrassment might finally force city leaders to govern like it actually cares about what the city looks like. And that bothers me probably the most of all of this. You have all these people who claim their love of the city. Oh, they love this city. They were born and raised here, or anywhere in Washington. They love it. And they get mad at people like me and they tell me to move because I'm critical. But if you really loved your home, would you allow it to get so bad? I would think not. So do you really love Seattle, or do you love your ideological blindness or your ideological rigidity that keeps you hyper-focused on allowing this crap because you just want to make sure that your policy prescriptions are always in place? So spare me. Oh, I love it. No, you don't. You don't love anything. You know what I love, however? That every qualifying new and used vehicle comes with oil changes for life from the Sunset Auto family. You get up to 5 a year. You're going to save thousands of dollars over the lifetime of your vehicle. So when you're ready for your next car or truck, be sure to visit our friends at the Sunset Auto Family in Auburn or Sumner, online at sunsetautofamily.com. Let's find out what else is trending.
What's trending? International.
Ambassador Mike Waltz was on the Fox News Brian Kilmeade weekend show, One Nation, on Saturday night. And he said something that I think is really important to understand in the context of what's going on with Iran, in particular with the Strait of Hormuz, where you get a lot of oil traveling between. It is, under threat. It's been under control of Iran, less so now, but still under threat. And he made an important point that folks have to consider in the context. Sure, there's no doubt that oil prices are going up. But listen to this.
Russia has now lost its largest manufacturer and supplier of drones, the Shahed drones that have been so devastating. Oh, by the way, so have the Houthis, Hezbollah, Hamas, and everyone else. Russia's also lost a supplier of ballistic missiles.
Because of our attacks on Iran.
So that symbiotic relationship has to break. Special Envoy Witkoff has delivered a very tough message. And at the end of the day, this kind of axis of evil is going to be broken. Iran is no longer going to be a threat and no longer going to be a supplier to China and Russia.
That last part is important. No longer a supplier to China in particular. When it comes to oil, a little bit different with Russia, but this is about China. About 80% of oil coming out of the Gulf through the Strait of Hormuz goes to Asia. And when he says that, when he's pointing that out, he's putting his finger on exactly why this choke point matters. 84%, I just looked it up, it's from the Energy Information Administration. This is a U.S. agency. Sounds like a fun time. They say about 84% of crude oil moving through Hormuz, the Strait of Hormuz in 2024 went to Asian markets. And, we're talking China is a big one. India, Japan, South Korea are also big destinations. And those matter. We'll talk about that in a second. I mean, specifically with India, it's why we allow them to take some Russian oil in the short term, because we don't want our partners to be harmed. But what this means when they're talking about the disruptions to the Strait of Hormuz, any serious disruption is not just like this Middle East story that's a little bit abstract. It hits the global oil market at a pressure point. And it is incredibly important for the transit of oil. But a lot of it, much of it goes to China, our adversary. Yeah, Americans feel the pain of this issue because oil is priced in a global market. So even though the U.S. imports very, very, very little Persian Gulf oil directly through Hormuz, tighter global supply obviously pushes up the world crude oil prices, which can raise gasoline and energy costs from Washington to New York. There's no doubt about that. But the EIA, again, this Energy Information Administration, says we only imported about 0.5 million barrels per day of crude oil through Hormuz in 2024, which is equal to about 2% of our petroleum liquid consumption. But it still doesn't insulate us from the price spikes tied to all of this. But the strategic upside that we all have to consider is that this hits China harder than it hits us by tenfold. China is one of the top destination markets for oil moving through the Strait of Hormuz. So any disruption puts direct pressure on an adversary that is far more dependent on those flows than we are. And having them in all of this, yeah, they're going to provide to a degree some information to Iran that they can provide. But they also know what a losing battle might look like for Iran versus the U.S. And it hits them harder. And if it hits them harder, then they're willing to, accept. They're not going to really support Iran in the long term the way that they otherwise might. Because they don't want to be, they care more about themselves than they do about Iran. That will always be the case. That should be the case from China's perspective. But this is still a strategic upside for us. It doesn't mean that higher prices at the gas pump are painless. They're not. I filled up this weekend in Seattle, and I think the cost was $5.24 or $5.34. I can't remember. So that's a lot. This is not pain-free. But if a key global choke point becomes a bigger problem for China than for the United States, beyond the politics, that matters. Because it means one of our great geopolitical rivals, our greatest geopolitical rival, more so than Russia, has more immediate exposure to the fallout than we do. And in a world where economic pressure is part of a national power strategy, that's obviously not bad news. Again, we might not like it. We might not like the pain at the pump in the short term. But again, this is good news for us. Their suffering is good strategically, is good for us strategically. Let's find out what else is trending.
What's trending? The economy.
While the price of oil is undoubtedly up, good news is that the price of eggs are incredibly down. Incredibly. Remember, for me, let's go back down memory lane for a moment. Remember when the media acted like the price of eggs was the moral test of the American economy? Where every carton at the grocery store was treated like a 5-alarm political emergency, and now that the Republicans are in charge and price of eggs are high, or they did the opposite, which was when Biden was president and eggs were expensive. Oh, it wasn't that big of a deal. But stop. Who even eats eggs? They're very inconsistent. And that inconsistency is showing up again, courtesy of a report from Fox 13, actually came from Fox Business this morning, that egg prices are down dramatically. But now that they're down dramatically, suddenly, a lot of the same left-wing outlets don't seem all that interested. Egg prices have plunged because the impact of avian flu cases and supply has recovered pretty dramatic. It's not completely done, but it's going in the right direction, and all of this tracks with the latest federal data because avian flu, and in fairness to the Biden administration, I didn't blame him for the price of eggs going up on its surface. The Biden administration didn't do very much when it came to managing avian flu. That was the real problem, and that is something that you can tie to the president, at least to an extent. But again, it wasn't that big of a deal when left-wing media outlets were covering this story. But now that the USDA says egg production has increased, it's expected to keep recovering this year from last year. In fact, it's forecasting that prices will go down nearly 30% this year. At the same time, the Bureau of Labor Statistics reported that eggs as an index was down 42% over the last 12 months, at least through February. And again, the prices coming down is pretty simple. We had egg prices getting hammered by the avian flu outbreak. It started in 2022. It kept wiping out entire flocks. You have one bird that gets sick, you have to kill them all. And as a result, that crushed supply. That's really what's also behind, obviously not avian flu, but the same concept is behind the price of beef. We don't have enough cattle right now, and it's going to take some time to build that back up. Less supply, same demand means higher prices. But production is recovering, supply is normalizing, so prices are coming down. And that's, obviously that's how markets work. Now, there's still a risk, as the Fox Business report says, of volatility if we have another surge in avian flu. But obviously that's not permanent. Right now, that's not actually happening. But the part that's impossible to ignore is the media response. The media previously pretended to care deeply about egg prices. They're not celebrating this with any kind of similar energy, are they? And the reason is obvious. It doesn't hurt Trump. In fact, it helps him. That's the game. Their coverage is dictated and determined by whether or not something helps or hurts Donald Trump, and that's it. When prices on something politically useful go up, it becomes a national morality play, where every reporter suddenly becomes your personal grocery receipt analyst. They'll send some reporter from King 5 down to a local place to talk to people. It's like, man, the price of eggs it's out of control. It's causing all this pain and struggle. And then, of course, they play the blame game. But when a price drops and that undercuts their preferred narrative, oh, how quickly the passion disappears. Compare that to oil. Oil prices rise because of instability in the Middle East, fears around global supply, and left-wing media fixates on that nonstop. And again, I understand why you might cover this nonstop. I do. Just know why they're doing it. Not because they care more about your wallet, not because they suddenly discovered economic populism. It's because expensive oil can be used as a weapon against Donald Trump. And so they're going to happily use that. But if this exact situation happened under Joe Biden, they would be doing the opposite. They would. They'd be running glowing pieces about falling egg prices as proof the economy is healing. They'll go back to that same shopper at that same location, that same grocery store in Issaquah or in Bremerton. They'll have the reporter out there saying, how does it feel now that the price of eggs finally going down thanks to the hard work of the Biden administration? They would do that in a heartbeat, and they would play all those clips nonstop. They'd be praising resilience. And at the exact same time, they would downplay oil being expensive. They would blame global events. They would frame it in a way that says, well, global climate change really is an issue. We got to have fewer people driving anyway. And they would tell you not to politicize it. That's not journalism. It's like narrative management. On this show, we're just honest across the board. Oil is up, eggs are down. One is bad, one is good. That's how we do things. Egg prices are down. That is real. That matters. It's good news for people at home. It also proves that when the story cuts against the preferred anti-Trump script coming from left-wing media outlets, the media is supposed to supposed to have the concern for household costs up until that point. Yeah, all of a sudden they're getting really, really quiet. They cared when eggs could be turned into a talking point against Trump. But now that they're cheaper, they're moving on. Funny how that works, isn't it? Funny how that works. 1-800-465-8770 for your text messages. 1-800-465-8770. Don't forget to check out SeattleRed.com. Get news and opinion for the Pacific Northwest without any of the left-wing spin. It's a great website. We're doing some amazing work. I hope you'll check it out, SeattleRed.com.
Are you an adult with uncontrolled moderate to severe Crohn's disease symptoms and still packing a backup bag of clothes? Just in case? Skyrizi Risankizumab Riza can help you take control of your Crohn's. Feel significant symptom relief, including less abdominal pain and fewer bowel movements at 4 weeks. Plus, Skyrizi is proven to help people achieve remission and visibly improve damage of the intestinal lining. Individual results may vary. Skyrizi is a prescription injection medicine. Don't use if allergic to Skyrizi. Serious allergic reactions, increased infections, or lower ability to fight them may occur. Before treatment, get checked for infections and tuberculosis. Tell your doctor about any flu-like symptoms or vaccines. Liver problems leading to hospitalization may occur when treated for Crohn's. Ready to take control of your Crohn's? Ask your doctor about Skyrizi, the #1 prescribed biologic in Crohn's disease.
Control is everything to me.
Learn more at skyrizi.com or call 1-866-SKYRIZI.
Is your heating bill too high? That's an all-red emergency. Go to trustallred.com to discover how a new high-efficiency heat pump could cut your energy costs 10, 20, 30% or more. And with rebates and programs available, now is a great time to save big. So you'll be warm and snug in the winter and cool and comfy in the summer. Go to trustallred.com. That's trustallred.com today, because if it's all red, it's all right.
Those of you interested in building your very own shop, horse arena, or farm equipment storage, Pac West Arenas will provide your engineering and a kit if needed. A kit includes step-by-step instructions, unlimited communication, and a one-time 4-hour site visit from an expert. If you also need engineering, Pac West Arenas will guarantee it in 10 business days. Consult an engineering and kit expert. Pac West Arenas, your one-stop shop for all your pole building needs. Go to pacwestarenas.com.
We all hear the radio ads about the IRS. They tell you to be afraid, to be scared, and they try to frighten you into calling. I'm not here to do that. Tax Relief Advocates is different. TRA is here to tell you that if you owe money to the IRS, whether it's $5,000, $50,000, or $500,000, we have a solution. It doesn't matter if you're sitting in your car, at work, or with your kids. No matter where you are, call now. 800-575-8157. Don't lose hope. TRA can eliminate or reduce what you owe to the IRS.
Generous programs are now available that can give you a fresh start.
Our passion is taxes and helping individuals fix their IRS problems.
We have over 1,000 5-star reviews on Google and an A+ with the Better Business Bureau.
You don't need to be afraid of the IRS any longer. End your tax nightmare today by visiting us online at TRA.com or call 800-575-8157. That's 800-575-8157. Tax Relief Advocates, real solutions for real people.
The stock market was on fire in 2025 due to AI and tech stocks. Now is the time to set a strategy for 2026. It's a good opportunity to lock in those gains and invest into a stable platform. With $8 trillion in cash sitting on the sidelines, investors are either scared or unsure where to go. Hi, I'm Scott Rurecka, CEO of Legacy Group Capital in Bellevue. Legacy Group Capital develops local real estate, lends money, and shares the profits with our investors. Diversify with Legacy Group Capital. Invest into our Northwest Fund, which is currently delivering 9% on a fixed rate term. It's our flagship fund for 19 years with zero investor losses. And yes, we do accept IRAs. Find out why 1,300 local investors have invested over $350 million.
Legacy Group Capital at legacyg.com. This is not investment advice. Investments available to accredited investors only. Details at legacyg.com.
SeattleRed.com.
Washington is a sanctuary state.
Local.
This was brought on by Democrats.
Conservative.
Democrats got all excited, high on their own supply.
Bold.
At least they can appreciate the president coming in with some type of help.
Finally, a website dedicated to local news in Seattle and the Pacific Northwest without the liberal spin.
This is going to be a major issue going forward.
Make it the first site you read every day. SeattleRed.com. The Jason Rantz Show.
All right, let's break it down with Seattle radio host and author Jason Rantz.
Jason, if I didn't know you, my first question would be, do you make these stories up?
No, they accepted this proposal.
I guess it's a measure of how much they really don't like Trump, isn't it?
Long form.
It's not a surprise that in a state that punishes success, successful people are saying, okay, I'm out, I'm done, can't do it anymore. And unfortunately, that's the position of my next guest. He is Zach Abraham. He's the principal and CIO over at Bulwark Capital Management. He's also the host of Know Your Risk Radio, and he joins me now. Welcome to the show.
Wish it was under different circumstances, but thanks for having me.
Of course. I wish it were as well. Obviously, Democrats passed an unconstitutional income tax. You're going to leave the state?
Yeah, I don't feel that I have a choice, and the biggest reason, I mean, outside it being just ridiculous, a couple reasons. My effective, and I don't have the exact numbers yet because this is all still pretty new, but this new tax takes my effective tax rate to somewhere between 49 to 51%. When you include everything, excise, B&O taxes, the whole shooting match, and at a 50% tax rate, do you even own your business? Right? Like I take all the risk. I take all the risk of regulation, all the risk of competition, and I take, all the balance sheet risk, and then we split the profits. So there's an issue there. Why would I do that? That doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And then the other part of it, Jason, is what I'm kind of referring to now as legislative infidelity, meaning you've broken the law, the contract that we both agreed to, the state constitution. How can I trust anything? And my business is by far and away my largest asset, right? How do I leave that asset here in a state that breaks the contract that we all agree to live by and then just says, no, you can just stay here and just keep paying us. There's nothing else to worry about. We'll never stick it to you in a worse way. And you're going, I don't believe you. And, so what do you trust? How do I trust the value of my business here, this thing that I've worked, my entire career to build? I can't. And I just, the other question is, what shoe drops next?
Precisely. And, that was a question that, frankly, a lot of folks asked after the capital gains tax. We kind of knew what the next shoe was going to be, but a lot of people, I guess, had their heads in the sand, not thinking that they would go through with what's clearly an unconstitutional income tax, which the intent seems to be put something that's unconstitutional out there to get in front of the Supreme Court so that they completely invalidate a 1933 decision. So we have almost a 100-year precedent that declares income as property, and you can't, have a property tax unless it's uniform. So that's the whole goal. It's not just going after Zach Abraham. It's going after literally everybody else. Why do you think you're ready to make this decision to move before the case gets to the Supreme Court, and ultimately we got about a year and a half before we would even know that?
I am born and raised here, born and raised in Gig Harbor, live in Gig Harbor now with my family and my children. So I don't want to leave. But like I said, regardless of if this bill does not pass, I will be purchasing a home in another state regardless because of this experience. And I'll have the ripcord ready to pull. I will be changing my articles of incorporation regardless of how this plays out. So if the tax were to get repealed somehow, I would stay for now. And none of the changes I would make would affect the tax revenue that I currently pay to the state. And Jason, I'm sure you know this. You probably talked about this on the show. There's another part of this that I haven't heard anybody in Olympia address. Is you're all focused on the percentage of the top 0.15% of Washington families that this tax targets. And you're sitting there playing the math, how many of those people you think are going to pay the tax. What I haven't heard anybody address is the excise, B&O, and other taxes that we're taking with us when we leave.
Exactly.
Right? So it's not just the revenue tax. I've gone through I don't understand how this tax, ironically, does not blow a hole in the side of the state budget a mile wide. And I think I will tell you this. As a guy that does investments, we're not huge, but we manage about $1.1 billion. and so I work with other private equity firms in the city. Virtually everybody that I've talked to is getting out, and they're getting out not to stick it to the man, not to avoid paying the income. I mean, that's part of it, but they're getting out because on the VC side, you're not going to be able to track tech talent here. The no income tax really was an offset, right? It was an offset that compensated you for being in a, out of way location and not having good weather 7 months out of the year. It's not a benefit. So you pull that away, and then you look at cost of living. If you just look at the metrics, this will become one of the worst places in the country to start a business. And it's just numbers, right? That's not a political viewpoint. Whatever the internal estimates are about who they think are leaving and the percentage that are leaving, I can just tell you it's way higher than they think.
Well, and that's such a crucial point to be made. I mean, you had posted on your X account that you were just at a board meeting last week at a Woodinville tech company that you're on the board of, you invested in, and you spoke with members of the board, and they're all saying the same thing, that they're going to leave the state. Yeah. So if you sit down and you think about it, in that board meeting, if you added it all up together, the group of us that were sitting manages about $4 billion. Every single one of us was leaving. So that's $4 billion of investment capital that's walking right out the door. And that's just at one small tech meeting, right? So the other thing, the timing of this couldn't be worse. It's easier to work remote. I know a lot of people that are not changing their business. They will still be focused primarily in Western Washington. They're just moving themselves and their business outside the state. So it's just, obviously it's the illegal part. I just, from the economic and financial standpoint, and I've spoken with, so many people about this, but from the economic and financial standpoint, of course nobody wants to pay the tax. But it isn't just that. You've created a scenario like people are fleeing New York and California and LA, but those are two major global hubs that people have to go to and have to transit in and out of. Horrible comps for this area, horrible. And it's gone from there being reasons to move here, reasons to build businesses here, to there just aren't. And it really is that simple. And while these laws exist, and if, God forbid, they keep passing them, they're going to blow fiscally. They're going to blow the state apart, and it's not going to take long. We're talking with Zach Abraham. He's the CIO and principal of Bulwark Capital Management, also host of Know Your Risk Radio. The website, by the way, bulwarkcapitalmgmt.com. There are a lot of folks on the left, a lot of people who maybe just sort of casually follow all of this, and they've had some interesting responses. One, calling people like you greedy. Two, saying good riddance, we don't want you. And others just, taking the position of like, oh, boo-hoo, the poor multimillionaire is not going to, quote unquote, pay his fair share. How do you respond to those simplistic criticisms?
It's extraordinarily frustrating, and I'm not going to go down a litany, but when they say their fair share, they have absolutely no idea what they're talking about. They don't know. They're not considering. And again, I'm not saying this. My wife and I are actually very private about our giving, but I will just tell you this. There's not been a year in the last 6 where we have not given at least $250,000 or more to local charities and local people. And that's on top of the giving that we do to our church and other things. So we're not talking about the youth football team that I coach and the board that I'm on that runs that for the organization and all the kids that we pay for to play football. We are literally, and I'm not asking for a parade, I'm not asking for a trophy. I've been greatly rewarded and greatly blessed, and I feel obligated to give back. But give, not be coerced, not be manhandled, not be forced, right? Convinced. I'm choosing it. I'm choosing to give, and it is my money. And when you start, it's a tale as old as time, right? The leftists always want to take everybody else's money, but just be careful what you wish for, because these greedy people, and you and I both know them, all of the giving comes from these people. And so many of these people that they think they're the greedy ones. I've sat there and said publicly, let's pull out our tax returns. Me and Bob Ferguson, let's pull out our tax returns and not just look at nominal amounts. Let's do a competition over the last 10 years who's given a greater percentage of their income. And then let's add my charitable contributions to my tax rate. Let's compare those numbers. I guarantee you I blow him out of the water. Okay? He just wants to spend my money. And I don't even think it's that. It's just a mechanism for control, right? They just want more control. And so when these people make those comments, and I've gotten tons of them over social media, and I sit there and I go, you think it's greed? No. That $500,000 that this tax is going to cost me, I typically give that away anyway. Okay? That's not the issue. The issue is you're not going to tell me how to spend my money. You're not going to give me my first milli like that. I don't even know what that woman's name was, but she said on the we give them their first. You didn't give me anything. Okay?
Exactly.
So it drives me nuts, and it's really insulting. And there's another grief part of it where this community that you've poured so much lifeblood into, so much time, so many resources, looks at you and flips you the bird and says, we don't need you. And you're like, okay, well, I'll take me and my resources somewhere where they do.
And you do so reluctantly, I know. And it would even also be maybe a little bit easier to accept. You probably wouldn't accept it, but if the Washington Democrats came out and showed even a little bit of good faith in trying to cut out of control spending, cut out on the fraud, waste, and abuse, say, here's what we're realistically going to spend money on. You might not agree with the policy, but it feels like you would feel less personally attacked, and at least understanding that they're trying to do something foolish in good faith at least. But they're not even doing that. They're not even giving off the impression that they're doing this in good faith, and they're trying to blame Trump for some reason, as if this has anything to do with Donald Trump.
You know, I said this, and nobody that is on the opposition or that doesn't agree with me is going to believe me, and that's fine. But I said this. Had this been an effort to really get the budget under wraps and be responsible stewards of the state of our state's money and the tax revenue, had there been an earnest effort to do that, had they cut spending, and had they come out with a plan and saying, will you step up as a citizen of Washington, and in exchange for these tax cuts or not tax cuts, but spending cuts and pulling back to show you we're serious, will you step in and donate to our Fight the Deficit Fund or something like that? I would have done it. I would have donated money. I would have donated. I really would have, and I think a lot of other people would have. But the minute I look, and again, it goes back to what you said about the comments from so many in our community. I want to look at them and go, this is a really easy thing. Put yourself in our shoes. If somebody looked at you and said, we're going to break the law, and our breaking of that law means you owe us an extra $400,000 to $500,000 a year, or you can take that money and go buy a $4 million house in Arizona. Would raise your hand if you'd pay the tax? Of course they wouldn't. It's ridiculous, right? So it's there's so much lies, so much bad faith around it. And like you said, this is not an earnest attempt to fix the budget. If they did, they'd address the spending side as well, and they didn't even discuss it.
We'll obviously notice the flight soon, or sooner rather than later. But when do you think the economic hit will come to Washington as a direct result of this?
I think you're going to see it start. You know what's funny? In the initial, it could look a little bit beneficial. Think about the migration effects of COVID. You know, when people move, there tends to be it's kind of like churning up the waters, right? There's extra economic activity that can kind of give you false flags. But I would expect to start seeing a difference in the tax revenue. I think that's where you're going to see it. I think you're going to see it starting next year, and then I would expect to see a significant drop down, a visible step down in tax revenue the following year. And I think it should be fairly dramatic based on when you start looking at the people that I'm talking to and the amount of taxes we pay. I'll tell you what, I don't know anybody else moving in here to fill in the gap, right? So I think it should be pretty quick. I think you'll start seeing it next year, and then, like I said, I would expect to see it fairly drastically emerge in 2028.
And you're certain that they will actually follow through the way you plan to and move?
It's just a financial reality. You know what I mean? Like, I think there's a lot of people that might be saying that are making between $1 to $2 million a year. And that maybe when you start looking at the cost and everything of moving, they may retrace. When you're looking at incomes that are higher and or businesses like mine that are, we manage money for a living. It's not even hard. I mean, it's pack up the office furniture, grab the laptops, and go move to another state. But when you start talking about it in terms like that, right, like, it's going to save me $400,000, $500,000, $600,000. It's just to sit there and stare at that. It's just a really tough decision to make. And remember, that's not the only cost either. Yep. Go, the capital gains tax, the estate tax. Go look at the transactional taxes, gas taxes, all these other things. I'm looking the move. If I were to move to Arizona, my effective tax rate after this tax is enacted would drop almost 13%.
Wow.
I don't know how you turn your back on that. It's too substantive. Like I've said all along, it would be just as illegal, but if they were smarter, they'd have done it 2.5 to 3%. You still would have had people leave, but it's not a big enough number to make you go, I got to get out of here, right? You start showing me $400,000, $500,000, $600,000 a year.
Yeah, that's absurd.
It's just too much. I mean, it's just crazy. And then you add it to the other taxes. I mean, basically, you look at that tax and my other tax savings. When I move out of state, it's like making an extra $1 million a year after taxes. So, yeah, and for rain 7 months out of the year, right? It's just not financially feasible. You just sit there and go, this is nuts.
Exactly. It is nuts. Again, we've been talking with Zach Abraham. He's the principal CIO of Bulwark Capital Management. You can follow him on X. It's KYR Radio, Know Your Risk Radio. He's the host. Zach, my friend, thank you so much for coming on and sharing these perspectives. I hope some folks start paying closer attention because this is real, and you're not the only one saying this publicly. Everyone says, oh, they're just all talking. It doesn't seem that's the case this time. Zach, thank you so much.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Of course. You're listening to The Jason Rantz Show. When we come back, we're going to dive into some quick hits right here on Seattle Red, online at seattlered.com.
Jason Rantz on Fox News.
Now Bernie Sanders flying a private jet to demand a communist wealth tax. Radio host and author Jason Rantz.
What's so particularly sad is he's pulling this line, which is the claim that they're truly only going after the wealthy, when the reality is they're going after absolutely everyone else. So what they're going to end up having to do is introduce higher taxes for folks who aren't the uber wealthy.
Exactly.
That's how it always starts.
The Jason Rantz Show every afternoon from 3 to 7 on Seattle Red.
Well, there's nothing I hate worse than being cold. And if your house is feeling a bit drafty or the floors of the main level are way too cold on your feet, that's probably because your crawl space and attic don't have enough insulation. It's probably making your furnace work overtime. So now you're spending more money as well. Well, how about a free and easy way to learn if you need better insulation? Just schedule a free corner-to-corner inspection of your crawl space and attic with Crawl Pros. It's exactly what I did. They'll show up to your house. They'll go where you don't want to, certainly where I didn't want to, and they'll tell you if you got any problems with your crawl space, your attic, and especially your insulation. If they do discover your home is under or improperly insulated, they'll show you all the utility rebates as well to help you get that work done correctly and affordably. If you're a PSE customer and your home was built before 1990, you could receive a rebate to cover up to 95% of the cost. Make your home more comfortable. Save on your energy bill with Crawl Pros. If you're worried that anything's going on in your crawl space or attic, critters, mold, water, plumbing issues, call Crawl Pros or go to crawlpros.com.
You know, retirement is supposed to be a time of rest and relaxation. But every week I get calls from seniors who are stressed out because their cost of living keeps going up. They love their home and they want to stay in it, but they're struggling with rising property taxes, monthly bills, and monthly mortgage payments if they have one. Hi, I'm Steve Teitler, owner of Best Mortgage, a local family-owned company. I specialize in the reverse mortgage, which allows seniors to tap into your home equity for tax-free cash to pay off your mortgage, pay off debts, and maybe put some extra money in the bank. A reverse mortgage is a great option for some people, but it's not right for everyone. So give me a call and you'll talk directly to me in person or over the phone for honest advice you can trust. Search for Best Mortgage on the web or call us at 425-649-6000. You'll talk to me, not an AI robot. Best Mortgage, 425-649-6000.
SeattleRed.com, the only place for local news.
He's using this, the mayor,
without the liberal spin.
to try to push back against National Guard coming to Portland to tackle crime and immigration.
Sign up for the newsletter and get the very latest local conservative news, opinion, exclusive video content, and more delivered right to your inbox every day.
We have got to stop entertaining this victim mentality.
Make it the first site you read every day. SeattleRed.com.
Spring is right around the corner, but the perfect time to start your outdoor project is right now. Natural Design Landscaping has been serving Seattle and the East Side for nearly 30 years. They design, build, and maintain stunning outdoor spaces, from full makeovers to weekly maintenance. Beat the spring rush and get your yard project started today. Mention Seattle Red and get 10% off your first service. Visit naturaldesignlandscape.com to schedule your consultation. Natural Design Landscaping, let's build something wonderful together.
Jason Rantz on Fox News.
Seattle just made it harder for ICE to do its job. Perfect time to bring in our Seattle guy. That would be Jason Rantz.
They can't exchange any information, cooperate in any way, shape, or form with federal immigration law. They've been open about their ideological position here, and as you and I have talked about many times, they make no distinction between criminal illegal immigrants who are dangerous and everybody else.
The Jason Rantz Show every afternoon from 3 to 7 on Seattle Red. Bookmark SeattleRed.com now for exclusive content. The Jason Rantz Show.
Bring in Jason Rantz, Seattle Red 770 AM host, and also SeattleRed.com. Jason, great to have you with us.
Jason, Seattle is just continually ground zero.
Yeah, and this is really the Pacific Northwest is ground zero for all this nonsense.
USA Today is mocking the far left.
The quick hit.
The Washington Post is learning a rather brutal lesson that many in legacy media still refuses to admit, that when you build your audience around partisan outrage, those people eventually turn on you the second you stop feeding them exactly what it is they want. Many people learned this during the time of real cancel culture, where progressives were going after their own. They were eating their own. And you should have learned at that point that you can never satisfy people who are incapable of satisfaction unless you are, in agreement, alignment with absolutely everything that they believe and demand of you. Now, according to Mediaite, citing the New York Times, over 60,000 Washington Post digital subscribers decided to cancel their subscriptions after Bezos announced, 6-ish weeks ago, that they were laying off about 44% of its reporters. Entire areas were hit hard. The sports department, for example, folded. The book section is gone. The Metro section was gutted. International coverage was slashed. Now, let's start just with the obvious irony here that if you're furious about job cuts at a newspaper, canceling your subscription doesn't actually save jobs. It ensures that more jobs will be cut. So let's just address the irony right out the gate. These people are hastening the next round of layoffs. And that's the part the performative outrage crowd never really thinks through, that they scream, this is management killing journalism, that this is outrageous, that this is absurd, and I need to act. And so they pull more revenue out of a business that's already failing and guarantee there's going to be even more cuts down the road. Now, who knows how long they'll stay without their subscription, but there's obviously going to be some short-term pain that they're already feeling. Fewer subscribers means, less money. Less money means fewer reporters. Fewer reporters means a worse product, or maybe in this case, depending on who it is they can, a slightly better product. And a worse product, though, at the end of the day, means even more people cancel. That is how you create this death spiral. Critics of the layoffs, including a lot of media observers, they've openly warned about exactly that dynamic, and yet it still comes to fruition each time. But there's a deeper problem here, and this is where the Post deserves less sympathy than it's getting from the media class. The Washington Post would not be suffering nearly as much if it had spent the last 6 years acting like a fair and good faith news organization instead of a prestige vehicle for the worldview of sort of the upper income Democrats in New York and D.C. That was their biggest mistake. And it's not just the Washington Post that's falling victim to this. The legacy outlets convinced themselves that their core mission wasn't to report the news aggressively but fairly, but instead to flatter the base of the Democratic Party. They listened to the loudest activists, the most online staffers, the subscription class that wanted, instead of journalism, they just wanted affirmation. And once you train your audience to expect partisan activism disguised as reporting, they punish you anytime you show even the slightest independence. That is exactly what happened here. The same crowd that spent years demanding ideological conformity is now canceling because Jeff Bezos and his management made decisions they didn't like. Okay, fine. They have every right to cancel. Have at it. But don't pretend that this is some sort of noble defense of journalism when it's consumer activism from the very people who support institutions only when those institutions function like partisan weapons. And the Post helped to create that audience, like so many others. Now, while a lot of this, you can say, started before 2020, it really got bad in 2020 with the rise of the BLM movement and cancel culture. There was this push to accept the radical ideas coming from activists, and there were too many, like the Washington Post, that decided to just lean in and create that new audience. This is the consequence of listening too much to the radical left inside and outside of your own newsroom. You stop building trust with normal readers when you do that. You stop appealing to people who want facts without a lecture. And I say this as someone who often lectures, but I say this as someone who is openly conservative. I don't pretend that I'm not a conservative, and I don't pretend that I'm a down-the-middle reporter. I'm not a reporter. I'm a journalist, but I'm not a reporter. I report, and many times I do reports that are just simply down the middle. Sure, but I don't hide my bias. You know exactly where it is I stand. The Washington Post tried to pretend that they're somehow down the middle. Same thing with the New York Times, while appealing exclusively to the radical left. And when you do that as a news organization that's supposed to be a news organization, you stop sounding curious or fair, and eventually your customer base narrows to committed partisans who, in this case, are Democrats that see the paper as part of, partly to give you what you're supposed to get from a newsroom, but also resistance therapy. And the second management does something insufficiently ideological, those same readers storm out. Congratulations, you just built a business model around emotional blackmail. Now, again, the Washington Post has said that they're trying to course correct. We had, last year, I can't remember, maybe mid-year, Jeff Bezos came out and said, you know what, now in our op-ed pages, we're only going to do things that are about blah, 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 blah. Essentially rejecting the leftism that had infected every inch of that newspaper. And perhaps this is, again, going to lead to the course correction. Course correction takes a lot of time, especially at institutions like the Washington Post. And it probably wouldn't be wise just to do it all at once. And so they might just build back that 60,000 cancellation from, normal readers and do all right in the long term. But for certain, there's going to be some short-term pain. And the question is, financially, can they really manage that in the long term? And I don't know the answer to that. 1-800-465-8770 for your texts. You're listening to The Jason Rantz Show on Seattle Red, online at seattlered.com.
Is it time to get your home sold? Nick Southard with Upgrade Realty here. Selling hundreds of homes for over 25 years has taught me presentation is everything. Picture amazing photography, designer staging, and maximum exposure. With my luxurious marketing, you'll sell fast at top dollar and save thousands in fees for just 1% listing commission. To learn more, visit upgraderealty.com. Upgrade your listing for 1%. Upgraderealty.com.
John Curley here. Last year was one of the hottest on record. Did you know a heat pump from Home Comfort Alliance gives you efficient heating and cooling year-round for the price of paying for air conditioning? Don't wait. Call the comfort people. Home Comfort Alliance. HomeComfortAlliance.com.
If you need security for your event or business, contact Security Services Northwest. From armed and unarmed officers to advanced remote monitoring, they've been doing it all since 1977. Go to ssn.com nwhq.com for Security Services Northwest.
Homeowners, stop what you're doing right now and listen up, because Puget Sound Energy has new rebates that have never been this high. If insufficient insulation or no insulation at all in your crawl space or attic are impacting your energy bills, now's the time to get your free inspection from Northwest Crawl Space Services, because these PSC rebates could pay for up to 95% of your project, and that could mean thousands of dollars in savings on your job. But make sure you hire a crawl space company that's PSC certified, because not every company can offer these rebates. Don't miss out. Call today, and the team from Northwest Crawl Space Services are happy to give you a free energy savings consultation. Northwest Crawl Space Services will get rid of the critters, re-insulate your home, and hook you up with big-time savings and PSC rebates. Remember, these guys can solve any crawl space or attic problem, no exceptions. See if you qualify for savings from PSC. Go to nwcrawlspace.com.
Jason Rantz here. Apparently, researchers have found a direct correlation between daylight saving time and an increase in car accidents. When we lose that hour of sleep, reaction times drop. Drivers get groggy, crashes spike. So if you're in an accident, don't try to battle the insurance company alone. Call the Herald Car Law offices right away. It can save you time and money when dealing with medical bills, repair costs, lost wages, or non-economic damages. Go to carlaw.com. There are 2 R's in car, C-A-R-R, carlaw.com. Car accident? Call CAR.
Hey, this is Pete from What Matters, a show that covers everything having to do with your home. Tune in every Saturday from 2 to 3 on Seattle Red, where you'll hear from local business owners who are experts in their industries. From foundation to flooring, roofing and windows, furniture and financial planning, it's everything in and around your home, and we've got you covered here on Home Matters. If it matters to you, it matters to us here at Home Matters. Saturdays from 2 to 3 right here on Seattle Red, or listen to the podcast on mynorthwest.com.
File now with TurboTax on Intuit Credit Karma. They'll find every credit and deduction or your money back. File today the easy way in the Credit Karma app.
Seattle Red on 770 KTTH Seattle, 97.3 KIRO FM, HD3 Tacoma Seattle, 94.5 K233 DT Eastlake, 33 BU Seattle.
Rockets in the skies. I'm Lisa Lacera, Fox News. Iran and its proxies taking aim at Israel and other countries in the Middle East, including Iraq.
Firing ballistic missiles at Israel 7 times. We're learning of an Iranian drone strike at a high-profile Baghdad hotel. This is in Iraq's green zone. It's the Al Rashid Hotel, where diplomats will often stay. Another Iranian drone caused major flight disruptions at Dubai International Airport. Iran also attacked Qatar, Bahrain, and the United Arab Emirates. Before that, debris from an intercepted missile caused damage in Jerusalem, just blocks from the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. This is where Christians believe Jesus was crucified, buried, and resurrected.
Fox's Nate Foy in Tel Aviv. This afternoon, President Trump had praised for the military strikes on Iran, talking about the first night of the mission.
Every single bomb was dropped right down the chute that it was supposed to hit.
The president standing by his claim that if the U.S. and Israel did not act, Iran would have used a nuclear weapon. Meanwhile, a high-stakes summit for President Trump in China could get postponed.
President Trump says he's asking Chinese President Xi Jinping to delay a summit in Beijing set to start at the end of this month for at least 1 more month.
It's very simple. We got a war going on. I think it's important that I be here. You know? So it could be that we delay it a little bit.
The president says there's no tricks he's trying to play, and the Treasury Secretary says any postponement would not be a form of trade pressure. Still, President Trump is asking China and other Asian countries to send ships as part of a coalition to secure the Strait of Hormuz near Iran.
Fox's Jared Halpern at the White House. A Utah jury has found Corey Richins, who wrote a children's book on coping with grief after her husband's death, guilty of aggravated murder. Prosecutors say she poisoned him with fentanyl. America's listening to Fox News.
I'm Liz Clayman, and this is the Fox Business Report. On Wall Street, stocks rose and oil prices pulled back, lifting investors' sentiment while AI momentum gained speed. Brent crude, the international benchmark, retreated back to around $100 a barrel after briefly pushing past $105, while U.S. crude fell to around $93. Shares of airlines and cruise operators climbed on falling fuel costs. All 11 of the S&P 500 sectors were higher, led by tech, and the Magnificent Seven big cap tech stocks were higher across the board, led by Meta and Amazon. Meta stock rose over 2% following a Reuters report that said that the social media company is planning layoffs that could affect 20% of its 80,000 employees to offset its artificial intelligence spending plans. The Dow rising 388 points, the Nasdaq higher by 269, S&P 500 up 67. That's your Fox Business Report. I'm Hillary Barsky, invested in you.
My name is Whitney Allen, and I'm a widow. My husband, Ryan, died. We never thought we'd ever have to use life insurance, but the unexpected happened. With Ethos, signing up was fast and 100% online. You can get a quote in seconds, apply in minutes, and get same-day coverage. No medical exams, and you can get up to $3 million worth of coverage. I'm grateful we were prepared.
Get your free quote at ethos.com/term. That's ethos.com/term. Paid spokesperson. Time spent on application may vary.
No! The yellow light! I'm walking here! I'm walking!
Good afternoon and welcome to the Jason Rantz Show. We are here on this Monday afternoon. Hope everyone had a wonderful weekend. You're listening to Seattle Red 770 AM. We're streaming on the Seattle Red app online at seattlered.com. We got a lot to get to this hour. A man who's just a quote-unquote Washington man received a bill from the DHS for $1.8 million because he didn't leave the state of Washington when he was supposed to. King 5 is there to tell his sob story. It's not actually a sob story. We're going to get into that and so much more. But first, a staple here in Seattle and Redmond closing after 25 years, just days after the income tax was passed. That's what's trending. Brought to you by the Sunset Auto family.
What's trending? Happening now.
Blazing Bagels, which has been a local chain that's operated all across Western Washington for 25 years, building a loyal following across the region, they abruptly shut down all 5 of its locations this week. The announcement came from King 5 on, I believe it was Saturday night when I originally saw this, but yesterday I saw some more reporting out on Reddit of people who went to their local shops to find that it was closed. Others taking photos of the storefronts that now have signs on them reading that they're shut down. And just like that, gone. Employees told King 5 that they got an email on Thursday with the announcement. And a lot of them, of course, were shocked by this. There were some rumors going around that Blazing Bagels was going through some tough times, and King 5 says they're going to be filing for bankruptcy, presumably in the coming days, if not today. But, you know, they spoke to some employees at the Soto Blazing Bagels, and they were obviously emotional, having to go into their place of employment, collect all of their belongings, and leave.
It was very emotional. A lot of us were crying as we were talking and gathering like our personal belongings and everything.
And of course, there are employees who enjoyed what it was that they were doing, enjoyed the people that they were working with, who they won't get to work with anymore.
Seeing all of my coworkers and knowing that I'm not going to get to like just work with them anymore is a little crushing, because I really loved this job.
So Saturday, the workers were showing up to get their personal belongings. They found out at that point that they weren't reopening. And now the Chapter 7 liquidation begins. Now, this wasn't a struggling fly-by-night operation that never found its footing, right? I mean, this was Blazing Bagels. I don't eat bagels, certainly haven't within the last year, as it's very carb-heavy. But I've had Blazing Bagels before, and they've done some work in this building. I remember when our sister station was doing a fundraiser for Treehouse, which helps foster care kids. I was producing that years and years and years ago, and they were always happy to pitch in any way they could. And, you know, sometimes it just meant bringing bagels down to the volunteers who were answering phones for, you know, donations coming into Treehouse. And they were part of the community, but they've been here for a while. They've had stores, not just in Seattle, but they had it in Redmond, which I think is where they were based, Bellevue, Issaquah as well. This was a known name, a staple in the community, a place that people counted on for their bagels and for their coffee. And not that long ago, the discussion around this company was expansion in Washington state, not extinction. And that's what makes this story hit harder for a lot of folks. They shared their message with great alarm from the staff members who I understand were frustrated.
If they knew that things weren't going well, they should have said something so like people could start looking for jobs.
And while I understand that, I certainly sympathize with that position. And if I were in his position, I would hold that exact same viewpoint, right? No one wants the rug pulled out from under them. But sometimes that's easier said than done. And to me, it could indicate that this was a company that was struggling to get by in a very inhospitable environment, not wanting to pull the plug until they absolutely had to. But that is an important piece of all of this. This is the part where Washington Democrats and their allies in the media, including King 5, pretend that every business collapse is just some sort of isolated tragedy, that maybe it's bad luck, maybe it's bad business decisions that finally caught up to them. It's the market doing things that the market will do. Nothing to see here beyond just the sad story of employees who are out of a job. And certainly that's part of the story. But they never want to acknowledge that there could be a connection to policies coming out of Olympia that make it harder and more expensive and, frankly, more miserable to run a business in the state of Washington. Blazing Bagels managed to survive the Great Recession. It survived COVID. It survived the endless chaos that came with not just lockdown insanity, but inflation, the general anti-business culture of Seattle, the crime crisis that infected this entire region. The founder, Dennis Ballen, or Ballen, B-A-L-L-E-N, he was the kind of guy who even took the city of Redmond all the way to the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals over a ridiculous sign ordinance, and he actually won. This was not some sort of weak company. This wasn't an owner who didn't know how to battle through adversity, and yet now this business is gone. Now, it would be lazy to say that Washington Democrats passed an unconstitutional income tax and then, boom, Blazing Bagels shut down because of that alone. That's not my argument. I think the argument is bigger, and frankly, it's more damning. The closure of Blazing Bagels happened in a state that has become increasingly hostile to employers, to entrepreneurs, and especially small and mid-sized businesses just trying to survive on tight margins. I mean, food businesses in particular run on those razor thin profit margins, and they are getting hammered from absolutely every direction. Labor costs are up, regulations pile up, compliance becomes a full-time job, rent is high, insurance is high, utilities are high, and supply costs are high. And so what did Washington Democrats decide to do despite all of this? They pass an unconstitutional income tax that sends one more message to anyone trying to build something here, is that we will punish success, we will change the rules. We don't care if you decide this place is no longer worth the risk. That matters, that messaging. Even if the tax wasn't a direct cause of this bankruptcy, and again, I doubt that it was a direct cause. I think it is foolish and naive to believe that none of these policies at all contribute to the general environment that makes it more difficult to do business here. Because even if that tax wasn't a direct cause of any of this, it contributes to the broader instability. It reinforces the sense that Washington is no longer a place where business owners can plan with confidence. It tells investors in these businesses or operators, franchisees. It tells the family-owned companies that people running the state see them less as partners in economic prosperity and more as walking ATMs. And once that mindset takes hold, closures like this, they don't feel surprising. And that's the real story here. Another local institution is gone, and the people in charge keep acting like they have nothing to do with creating the conditions that make survival nearly impossible. They talk endlessly about equity. They talk about the importance of building community and uplifting workers' rights. But then businesses close and workers lose their jobs. Customers lose the place that they go to every morning for their morning breakfast. And neighborhoods lose part of their identity. But hey, at least Olympia got to feel morally superior while another business bites the dust. You know, Blazing Bagels survived everything it was supposed to die from. Recession, pandemic, government nonsense, and still in the end, it's Democrats' anti-business climate that proved just too much. That should shame the people running this state. It's not. I'm not going to hold my breath that they feel anything here. But I do think that it should shame them. And the sad part is they're just going to go about their business as if nothing is in their control, that they're not responsible for anything. King 5 will still do a story that doesn't even mention any of the greater policies. And look, I don't know anything about Blazing Bagels. They could run this business into the ground and they were going to close anyway. Maybe. But to me, they've lasted this long. So I'm going to give them a little bit of credit that they know what it is they're doing. And I'm going to look at the obvious, which is yet again, Washington Democrats choosing to institute policy after policy after policy, year after year after year, that makes it just too much for businesses to handle. Let's find out what else is trending.
What's trending? Media bias.
Well, King 5 News, Woke 5 News did it again. And of course, it's Sharon Yu who's the reporter on this. So it means we're talking about illegal immigration, and it's going to be exclusively from the perspective of someone who thinks any kind of immigration enforcement is somehow immoral and unjust. They found another immigration story, looked at a guy who was ordered to leave the United States, chose not to leave, and then somehow framed him as if he's the victim. That takes some special talent. Now, King 5 doesn't identify the man, making it very difficult for us to do any of our own due diligence to find out some of the details behind why he was ordered to be removed. But we know that he went through the process. He's a guy who lives in Washington State, and they say he got a letter from the Department of Homeland Security demanding about $1.8 million because he failed to depart after receiving a final removal order. His lawyer is Olia Katala, an immigration attorney. She read to King 5 what the letter said.
It is ordered that a civil penalty be imposed upon you in the amount of $1,820,352.
Now, the report says he came to the United States from Vietnam as a child in the early 80s. But he got his final order of removal. Again, final order of removal in 2007. Who was president in 2007? It was George W. Bush. He's somehow escaped any kind of scrutiny from the left on immigration orders because this wouldn't have been controversial at all. And I imagine it's gone through the process, or at least to a point, since 2007. So it likely also saw Obama, maybe even saw the first Trump administration. I don't know. But I do know that he went through the court process and was ordered to be removed. And yet he decided, apparently, to ignore that since 2007. So for almost 20 years, he said, I'm not going to do it. His attorney told King 5 that he checks in annually. He's got work permits, but also acknowledged that he's had the final removal order hanging over him for years. But of course, King 5 frames this in shock and panic and heartbreak, outrage at the government.
My client came to the United States in the early 80s, fleeing the Vietnam War, or they came as refugees from Vietnam. And they settled in the United States. So he was only 5 years old when he came. And he's in his late 40s now.
Yeah. Again, they don't tell us why he was ordered removed, which generally means, Sharon Yu, because she's not a particularly good reporter and not interested in reporting, this is just another sob story. She either didn't ask the question, doesn't care, or she knows the answer would not benefit this propaganda piece. That's on her. So let's start with the part activist media outlets like King 5 always want to blur. There was a final order of removal, and that is not a suggestion. It's not a vibe. It's not a strongly worded Yelp review from the immigration system. This is a legal order. And federal law has long allowed civil penalties against someone who is willfully failing or refusing to leave after a final removal order. Now, according to the statute, there's a per-day penalty. And the current adjusted maximum, I guess, is up to $998 per day. Back in June of last year, DHS, DOJ, they announced that they were streamlining the process for imposing those fines. Again, this is to send the message that we mean business. And when you've got an order of removal, you actually have to be removed. You have to leave. So when King 5 acts like this bill just fell from the sky because orange man bad. No. That's not what happened. This is a law that's been on the books since the 1990s. Their own report admits that. But what's changed is that the administration is actually using the law the way it was intended to. And that's what the left, in and out of the media, just cannot stand. Think about the pattern. I just think about this logically, or at least we'll try to think about this logically, because they don't really use any logic, it seems, on the left when it comes to this and so many other issues. But they get angry when ICE makes arrests. No matter the circumstances, they get angry. They get angry when judges issue removal orders, regardless, again, of the facts of the case. They get angry when Congress passes any immigration law. They get angry when the Department of Homeland Security enforces the penalties tied to those laws, tied to those removal orders, tied to an arrest. At some point, maybe just be honest and say what you mean, King 5. You want open borders. You want no consequences. You want immigration law to exist only on paper, I guess. So activists and sympathetic reporters like Sharon Yu can pretend that it's cruel when anyone actually enforces it. That's the game here. Is $1.8 million a huge bill? Of course it is. It's huge. It's enormous. It sounds crazy because it's supposed to sound crazy. It's called a deterrent. When the law says you can be fined daily for ignoring a removal order, and then you ignore that order for years, the number gets big. That's how math works. King 5 even talks about the fine, quote unquote, making sense mathematically, because the penalties can run up to $998 a day. Now, the attorney's argument is that her client can't leave because Vietnam won't issue travel documents for refugees. In the story, it says that. And says, again, he's remained here legally, quote unquote, with work permits.
He does have a removal order, but he cannot leave. So he does have work permits, and he is here in the United States legally. He has had regular check-ins annually.
Okay, fine. That's the strongest part of the story from his side. And we can acknowledge that. If there's a legitimate legal dispute over whether the fine should apply in this case, he can appeal. In fact, that's exactly what the attorney says people should do. She's telling them that.
That's what I tell people. Don't panic. Just reach out to an immigration attorney because they know about this, and they can help you out. They can, you can appeal this process.
Yeah, everything is appealable. We got it. But the process does exist, and he can use it. And yet, again, King 5 pretends that this is some sort of major scandal or a controversy. Here's what I refuse to do, and what King 5 absolutely did. Pretends that the mere existence of a consequence is itself an injustice. No, it is not. And we have to completely reject that line of thinking. The injustice is that for years in this country, especially under the left's preferred immigration model, we've sent the message that laws are optional, that you can just ignore an order, miss a deadline, stay anyway. Fight everything forever and ever and ever, and there's always going to be someone on the left who will defend you. If the government finally says enough is enough, the media, at least King 5, rushes to the rescue with soft lighting and sad music and tells you the real villain is the system run by Orange Man. And this is why so many people are fed up.